Okay, welcome to BCP Eastern Planning Committee for the 19th of February 2026. If we open with housekeeping, please.
Thank you, Chair. Please note this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of the building in Bourne Avenue. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off mics and turning the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So item 1 is apologies.
So apologies have been received from Councillor Dr. Felicity Rice, and substitute members, Councillor Brian Hitchcock is here for Councillor Rice today.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Councillor Paul Hilliard. I'm the chair of the committee, and I asked members and officers to introduce themselves.
I'm Marion Le Pedvin, councillor for Newtown and Heatherlands, and I'm vice chair of committee.
Joe Salmon, Moordown Ward.
Brian Hitchcock, Hamworthy.
Michael Tarling, Christchurch Town.
Patrick Canavan, Boscombe West.
Matt Gillett, Talbot Woods.
Gillian Martin, Boscombe West.
Joe Clements, Pen Hill.
Toby Slade, Muscovy and Stratton Park.
David Flagg, Burton Grange.
Jocelyn Holbrook, Transport Development Management Team Leader.
Sanjyoti Mana, Team Leader, Strategic Applications. I'm also the case officer for the first item.
Simon Gould, Development Management Manager.
Thank you. And also there'll be some presenting officers as and when for each item. So item 3 is declarations of interest relating to the matters we're discussing. Councillor Slade.
At Southbourne Crossroads, I remove myself.
Thank you. Any others? But if anything comes to mind as we go through, then shout out. Item 4 is confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of January 2026. Is there anything to raise, or are we all in agreement with those minutes? All agreed? Those are agreed and approved. Thank you. Item 5 is public issues. After officer presentation, we will hear any public speakers, followed by any ward councillors who wish to speak. So item 6 is the schedule of planning applications, and 6A is Land East Phase 8 Holborn Farm, and that's Miss Manor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check if you all can hear me? Okay, thank you. So this application number is 8/2023-0512 full. This is a full application for the proposed construction of 104 residential dwellings, public open space, landscaping and associated infrastructure at land east of Phase 8 Holborn Farm Estate, Christchurch. This application is presented to Planning Committee because more than 20 public representations have been received, contrary to the officer recommendation. So this is the site location plan. So you can see the site is located, as identified by the red outline. It is located in Christchurch, in Mudford, Stanpete and West Highcliffe Ward. The site is located within an existing urban settlement at the edge of the BCP administrative boundary. In terms of the site context, this site is surrounded by existing residential estates, as you can see. Can you see my cursor? Yeah, so it's surrounded by existing residential estates, and it is in moderate proximity to the Hinton Admiral Railway Station, the secondary school, which is Highcliffe School, and then the shopping areas here, as well as there is a recreational ground in moderately close distance. There is an outline permission for up to 875 houses at Rochette Hill Development, which is located to the north of the site across A35 Lyndhurst Road. Right, so the part of the site is previously developed land. As you can see where my cursor is, it contains a builder's yard. There is an extensive tree cover to the east and southern part of the site, although some of these trees are not of high quality. Majority of the site, which is leaving this top corner here, the majority of the site benefits from an extant permission for 38 houses. Now, this site shows the planning constraints. There are several planning constraints to this site, which includes the Verno Lane Conservation Area, which is outlined with purple here. And part of the site is within conservation area, as you can see, this area here. There's a grade 2 listed building with the thatch. The thatch is outside of the application red line. However, this part of the site forms with the setting of the listed building. There is non-designated heritage asset of Verno House, which is again outside of the application site, but the site forms the setting of Verno House. There are multiple tree preservation orders within the site, including this the group of Monterey pines just to the north of the site. There is a woodland TPO to the south of the site, and then a group of veteran trees to the middle of the site here. The trees within the conservation area are also protected by the conservation area designation. The eastern, apologies, sorry. So the eastern side of the site, where you can see the orange hatched area, this is an existing ecological woodland ecological network. And this strip, the green strip to the south of the site, is council-owned land, and it is identified as open space. The existing access is from Cornflower Drive, and it is proposed to use that access or a similar access in this location. It is to be noted that the extant permission has got a very similar access of Cornflower Drive. And this slide shows the relationship between the site, which is again outlined red, and the designated heritage assets, which is Verno Lane Conservation Area here, as well as the thatch, which is grade 2 listed building. And these are some photographs of the site. The first photo here shows the existing housing estates, and then the Monterey pines along A35 Lyndhurst Road here. And then this second photo shows the grade 2 listed building and the conservation area in a long distant view. This photo shows a closer view of the thatch and the conservation area, which is within the thatch setting. Now, as you can see, there is actually no physical boundary between the conservation area and the rest of the site. Similarly, there is no physical infrastructure or any building within this conservation area. This photo shows the relationship between the site and the surrounding estates, and those are the veteran trees which are in the middle of the site. This photo shows the existing boundary conditions. So the first photo is the eastern boundary with Verno House. So as you can see, there is an extensive vegetation cover along this boundary, and then these trees are self-seeded and are of not very high quality. The second photo shows the southern boundary. So this is the access currently people are using from Manning Avenue, which is very informal, like an informal walkway, which normally people use to access the site. And I'd like to remind members that there is no formal legal access at this moment over the site. These photos show the visual character of the surrounding estates. As you can see, there are a variety of buildings in this area, some of which can be dated back to 1980s, where you can also see some modern estate developments here. So this is the proposed site plan. I had to rotate the plan by 90 degrees to be able to fit it in one slide and make it legible. The layout, as you can see, comprises of one spinal road, which is access from Cornflower Drive. And then there are cul-de-sacs branching out of this main spinal access road. This is similar to the surrounding residential estates, and it is acceptable. The proposal also includes pedestrian links, as you can see, to the surrounding estates, as well as to Manning Avenue and A35. And this includes, this actually improves permeability and supports movement through the site. Again, currently there is no authorized public access to the site, and the proposal will improve that situation. The density of the proposed development is similar to the existing density of the surrounding estates and will relate well to the existing character. The proposal will deliver 22 one-bedroom flats, 34 two-bedroom houses, and 40 three-bedroom houses, plus 8 four-bedroom houses in detached. So some of these properties are detached, and there are some other properties here are detached properties, semi-detached houses, block of flats, and there are 7 blocks or groups of 4 units together. So 4 of them are here, and 3 of these groups are located to the north. The layout is designed carefully to provide a higher density and compact form of development to the western side of the site. So that is on this side of the site. And then a looser grain of development within this area, which is located within the conservation area. And this also helps retaining an openness within the setting of the grade 2 listed, the thatch here. So these 10 detached dwellings, which are proposed within this conservation area, are arranged in like a grid pattern so that you can have wider back-to-back separations, and this leaves an open vista behind the grade 2 listed building to retain a sense of openness, which is currently within its setting. And also the layout retains a significant amount of open space along this eastern boundary with the heritage assets, and this will provide a good amount of separations and buffer zone between the sincere apologies, I don't know what's happening there. So this will provide a buffer zone between the designated heritage assets, non-designated heritage asset, and the proposed development. And the proposal also includes a children's play area, which would be situated within a walled garden. The walled garden currently is in dilapidated condition, so the proposal is for the revival of the walled garden and then introduce the children's play area. The children's play area is well located because it will receive surveillance from the surrounding houses, and it's supported by the council's open space team. There are 40% affordable housing suggested within this layout, which is policy compliant level. The affordable housing mix will include 10 one-bed flats, 15 two-bed houses, and 17 three-bed houses, which reflect the need in this area for the affordable housing. And the proposed buildings, as you can see, all will be 2-story high. The traditional design with pitch roofs that would be in keeping with the surrounding area. The houses will create an attractive and active frontage, and the varied street scenes will be achieved by using traditional materials, chimneys, dormers, and gables. So as can be seen in these street scenes, the first set of street scenes are from the entrance, the main access point of the site. So these buildings will utilize bricks and render finishes and topped with tiled roofs. These are the visuals of the clustered units that I talked to you about earlier. These units have been designed with front entrances within the front and side elevation. So there are 4 units in each block. 2 front entrances are in the front and other 2 front entrances are to the side, so that these blocks relate well to the main access road and also create visual interest. And these are the street scenes within the conservation area. These have got minor variations to design and proportions compared to the buildings within the main section of the site to reflect the historic setting. And these are some computer-generated images of the proposed development. So this is the main entrance from Cornflower Drive. This view is of the development looking north from the public open space. So you can see from here towards the development. This view shows the houses within the conservation area and looking from the public open space. And this view shows the clustered houses on this side. There's a pairs of semis, and then you can see the houses in conservation area in distant views. As I said before, the part of the site benefits from an extent permission of 38 units. So the plan on the left shows you the extent permission, how the 38 units were proposed, and this is the current layout. As can be seen, the current layout is more compact and it makes effective use of land in accordance with paragraphs 124 and 125D of the NPPF. This layout also maintains a degree of separation with the designated heritage assets, and yes, and the access is quite well designed. Now, this slide shows a comparison between the previously refused application for 121 dwellings and the current application. And as you can see, the previously refused application stretched all the way up to the boundary with the conservation, with the Verno house access lane, as well as all the way to the boundary of the thatch. There was no separation, no buffer. Similarly, here to the south, this road was there was an incursion into the RPS of the veteran trees. And here again, these residential gardens were stretching all the way to the boundary. So this layout wasn't appropriate, whereas in the current layout, a buffer is again introduced. The layout is more compact, making better use of the land. So in terms of the assessment, the proposal will make better use of land and provide 104 houses. The council's heritage officer has objected to the proposal on harm to the significance of the designated heritage assets. This harm has been identified to be less than substantial, which needs to be weighed against the public benefit. Impact on local highways network would be moderate, that can be mitigated by conditions and planning obligations. The proposed layout retains all important trees and provides high quality pedestrian connections, boundary treatments, appearance, and amenity. The loss of a section of open space will be mitigated by provision of better quality public open space. There will be a degree of ecological harm due to the loss of habitat, which can be partially mitigated by conditions. Any remaining impact will have to be considered in planning balance. Now, in terms of updates to the officer report, there are 3 key updates. So in paragraph 3 of the committee report, the mix of the affordable housing was wrongly stated. So the correct mix is 10 one-bedroom flats, 15 two-bedroom houses, and 17 three-bed houses. The second important update is that BCP's 5 years housing land supply has improved slightly for the last 1 year. So from 2.1 years as reported in the officer committee report, it's now 2.55 years with 20% buffer. And the third update is that a new condition is now proposed to secure 10% of the proposed, 10% of the predicted future energy use of each new dwelling to be from on-site renewable sources. So in terms of planning balance, the harm has been identified in 2 aspects. Firstly, heritage harm resulting from the loss of openness in the conservation area and within the setting of the listed building. This harm has been identified to be in the moderate level of less than substantial harm. And the other harm arises from the partial loss of habitat, including loss of feeding areas for some of the endangered bird species. These are balanced against the benefits of the proposal, which include additional 104 houses, policy compliant level, in fact, more than policy compliant level of affordable housing that will be delivered on site. And there is a demonstrable need for these units within this area. There will be improved connectivity and permeability through the site, public open space, including redevelopment of the walled garden, this children's play area, and retention of majority of important trees and additional planting, including woodland enhancement. So considering all this, the proposal is recommended for conditional approval, subject to successful completion of the legal agreement securing the planning obligations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the presentation. Now we lead on to public speakers, please.
Thank you, Chair. So we have two objectors, both of which are by written statement. The first is from Michelle Holly of Daisy Close. I am to formally object to the proposed development detailed in planning application 8230512 FUL at land adjacent to Phase 8 Holborn Farm to provide 104 residential dwellings. While I understand the need for new housing, I believe this proposal raises serious concerns for the local community for the following reasons. 1. Overdevelopment. The proposed number of houses is excessive for the size of the site. This level of density will significantly impact the quality of life for both new and existing residents. The design of the houses on this new plan is much better, as is the layout, but the sheer volume is still too great. 2. Insufficient parking provision. The plans do not provide enough parking spaces to accommodate the number of new homes. This will inevitably result in increased on-street parking, leading to congestion and greater risks for road users, especially children, cyclists and pedestrians. 3. Road safety concerns. The local road infrastructure is not equipped to handle the increase in traffic that this development would generate. This raises serious concerns about road safety, particularly at peak times. It is currently difficult to navigate around the estate with lots of cars parked around Trefoil and Saffron Drive, and I have witnessed several near misses. 4. Strain on local services. Local schools and GP surgeries are already under significant pressure. An influx of new residents will exacerbate the situation, making it even harder for families to secure school places and access timely medical care. The local Highcliffe Medical Centre has already stated that they cannot cope. 5. Wessex Water. Wessex Water have stated that the demand from additional homes could not be managed by the current system. Given these concerns, I respectfully urge the Planning Committee to refuse this application or require significant revisions to address the issues outlined above. Thank you for considering my objection. Second objection is from Nigel Brooks. Nigel Brooks, MBA, MRICS, Chartered Surveyor, Highcliffe and Walkford Ward Councillor, 2019 to 2023, Highcliffe and Walkford Parish Council Councillor, 2019 to 2023, Highcliffe and Walkford Neighbourhood Plan 2020 to 2028, lead member on behalf of Parish Council, Dorset Police Community Speedwatch Coordinator for Highcliffe and Walkford. Written statement of objection by. 2 substantive points. The site plan reference 9438/300 show 10 detached dwellings, an access road in the northeast corner of the site, south of the Grade 2 listed dwelling The Thatch, within the Christchurch Borough Council defined Verno Lane Conservation Area. BCP's heritage officers makes clear this incursion to the conservation area is totally unwarranted and states in paragraph 73, the proposed development will have a major irreversible and detrimental impact on this landscape. Further, the latest proposals do not meet the officer's approval and retain an objection. To underline this, the Highcliffe and Walkford Neighbourhood Plan states in policy HWNP 11, respect the character and heritage of the conservation areas within the parish and the setting to the listed buildings and other buildings of local architectural or historic interest. The 10 dwellings referred to should be admitted. You have not been provided with a copy Christchurch Borough Council's Conservation Area Plan, which is provided to you herewith for clarity of this point. A traffic management impact study has not been provided by the applicants. The addition of a further 100 dwellings to the Holborn Farm Estate, already with over 500 homes, will probably add some 150 private vehicles, plus deliveries and visitors. There are only 2 access egress roads to the estate. Highcliffe Road, 40 mph zone, egress turn left only, to the south, and Holborn Lane 30 mph zone to the east. A new egress only slip road is required at the north end of the site joining Lyndhurst Road, A35, 40 mph zone, to improve mobility and ease congestion. Community Speedwatch on behalf of Dorset Police have witnessed a serious vehicle accident and numerous near misses in Holborn Lane, which is a congested school run road and a route to senior, junior and infant schools. The foregoing objections points in relation to the conservation area have previously been made by Highcliffe and Warkford Parish Council as objections on the 18th of September 2023 and again on the 15th of October 2025 and by myself on the 7th of September 2023. In terms of support, we have Mr Giles Moyer, followed by Mr Jim Forward, if you'd like to come forward when you're ready.
Do I need to press the button? No, lovely. Thank you. There's only two options. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. I am Jim Forward, the Chief Executive of the Holborn Group, which includes the property developer Bury and Knight. I'd like to speak for a couple of minutes, if I may, and then hand across to our planning consultant, Giles. The recommendation before you is a product of months of meetings and discussions through a formal PPA process, and I'm grateful for the time, engagement and guidance of all the council officers involved in what I know are very busy times for all. We are a long-standing and experienced company, having delivered many projects across Dorset and Hampshire, including the successful construction of 650 family homes on previous sections of the land that we're discussing today. As a fifth-generation family business that has been around for 100 years and with deep-rooted connections to Christchurch, we care deeply that what we build benefits the area. Our aim is never solely just to build things, but to make a positive impact on communities. This includes providing over 1,000 jobs for local people. We are not an aloof national developer. We are a local business who will be here on the doorstep, caring that the build is delivered in a manner courteous to all our neighbours. In this development, we have adopted an approach which retains and enhances important landscape features. This includes bringing the former walled garden back to life, integrating this important feature into significant areas of open space, which haven't been claimed in the design for private gardens and won't be just for the exclusive use of future residents. The network of paths will connect the existing paths to the north and the south, opening up previously private land for all to enjoy. Furthermore, working in conjunction with your officers, we have landed on a traditional design for the properties, positively reflecting the character traits of Muddyford, Stampit and the Highcliffe area. The result of these elements is a development that I believe BCP, local residents and ourselves will become very proud of, and I hope you'll be able to support and approve our application for 104 much needed homes, along with significant new areas of public green space. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the application. As you'll be aware, the challenge that the council faces in delivering homes to meet future needs is significant, and this site provides an opportunity to make an important contribution to the supply of new homes, and this is reinforced in terms of delivery by the applicant's successful track record. The committee report sets out there's a very strong policy position to support and approve the application, and this is before the tilted balance is taken into consideration. The applicants believe the proposal should succeed on its merits. If you do consider it necessary to apply the tilted balance, the MPPF is clear that an application is to be granted unless there are strong reasons for refusal. This is a very high bar in terms of your assessment, and a strong reason for refusal is more than just a concern. There are no strong reasons to refuse this application. Part of the site, the northern section, is within the Verno Lane Conservation Area. Being within a conservation area does not prohibit development from coming forward. The test is whether the proposal preserves or enhances the conservation area. There is very little evidence that underpins the designation of the Verno Lane Conservation Area. It was made in 1988. However, there's no conservation area appraisal to identify any particular character attributes that are to be protected. The proposal, as you heard, includes bringing back to life the walled garden. The walled garden will form part of the green infrastructure proposal, and its reinstatement will better reveal the significance of the conservation area, representing a significant enhancement to the site. There have been some objections from local residents relating to car parking and vehicle movements. It's important to note that no objection is made by your highway officer in relation to parking provision, and the parking provision does include visitor parking. Nor have there been any objections in terms of traffic movements across a wider area from your highways team. The travel plans proposed as part of the overall proposal promote active travel and the use of public transport. This will include the provision of vouchers to future residents. The houses and flats will be provided with cycle stores. And as you've heard, the proposal provides links through to the existing network of footpaths, improving permeability. In terms of ecology, you've heard some objections with regards to the loss of habitat. It's important to note that there is a woodland management plan that will be secured by condition, and there are significant areas of retained habitat to the north of the site. In response to the comments regarding density, again, as you heard from your officers, the density is comparable to the surrounding area and doesn't lead to overdevelopment and will integrate well to the existing character. And finally, in terms of pressure on the NHS, there is a contribution towards the NHS facilities to be secured through the 106 agreement. I hope you're able to support the application and approve this scheme before you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. And final speaker.
And we have Councillor Leslie Deadman, who is joining us on Teams.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Oh, excuse me. I will summarise. I'm generally in favour of the application in the revised form. And as the committee will see from the report, and can I say thank you, officer, really very clear report. The committee will know that the site has been under construction from the original farm since 1979 onwards. Basically, the work has continued even until recently. So basically, it is a big and growing estate, and I know that a lot of the residents have mentioned and are keen to preserve what they're calling a green amenity, but I think has been pointed out, it isn't actually an amenity in the strict sense. I know some residents use it, and when we walked the site, we saw little heaps of stuff that the residents had put there, which is one way of using it, I suppose. And I'd also point out to the committee what some people seem to forget, which is that the estate was built on green fields, so which was a shame at the time, but now we have to accept that that's what we do. I've noted the mitigation work which is in the report. The one thing I didn't see, and I don't know if it was there, I'm sure the committee will figure it out, is the herpetological report. But apart from that, I think it was all addressed. And I do sympathise with the concerns over the loss of habitat, especially for the birds. Our bird population over here is dwindling very fast. I know there will be mitigation, and I'm also hoping, not that I want them to, but some of our birds will go to Hampshire because we're right on the border, and that is a big green space, obviously. As for the concerns on the traffic situation, I really have nothing positive to say. Our area is absolutely gridlocked most of the time. This will not help, but equally, I don't think that that is a reason for refusal. The traffic situation will need addressing. We've had talk of bypasses and such like. I don't think that that is relevant to this application. I think it's relevant to a much wider piece of work. And the medical facilities were mentioned. Well, all of that I totally endorse. I understand what the residents mean, but I think that most of that has been addressed or mitigated. And may I just say, from my soapbox, I deplore the central government's concentration on pushing us to fulfil this arbitrary housing number. As I say, I deplore that from all the governments, not particularly this present one. But this is a fact, and this development will help us to fulfil our obligations, which are forced upon us. And one thing I notice in the plans, which I will mention, the flats will only be 2 stories. And I know from my days when I chaired Christchurch Borough Council Planning Committee that, excuse me, our residents are very keen not to go above 2 stories. So I hope that this will be welcomed to them. On the walled gardens, I'm very pleased that the spirit of the walled garden is to be preserved. And I'm sad at the loss of any tree, obviously. But when we walked the site, I did see that a lot of them were diseased or in very poor shape. And I hope that the replanting will mitigate that. Drainage has been mentioned. Well, after the biblical rain we've had, this area is basically afloat. I'm in Muddyford and we're absolutely, as I say, afloat here. In more temperate times and with the mitigation, I'm sure that won't be a problem. The last thing I want to say, I'm not sure if I've gone over my times here, Chairman, I'm sorry. The residents will have great concerns over the actual building out of the site. We've had a lot of incidents of people leaving diggers all over the place and all the other accoutrements of building. So can I ask, if this is approved, that the site manager concentrates totally on trying to mitigate any concerns that our residents in the other houses have? It's very important. We don't want them to be upset simply because we are fulfilling our obligations in housing. So I hope that that can be taken very much to heart. So the committee will see that I'm basically in favour with a lot of concerns, but I hope that whatever conclusion you reach will be the right one. I'm sure it will. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Okay, so Ms Manny, was there anything raised by the speakers that you wanted to come back on this time?
Probably the only thing I think is the ecological report that councillor mentioned that you are missing. So we have secured that by condition. It is a pre-commencement condition, so nothing can go ahead on the site unless this report's been submitted and agreed.
Okay, thank you for that. So open to questions then, councillor Slade.
I'm curious, has access ever been considered for the north of the site?
We wouldn't want to support access onto the main Lyndhurst Road. It's 40-mile-an-hour road, and it's much safer to go back through the estate as proposed with the previous consents with the 38 houses. So it's much better to go through that estate rather than going onto the main road.
Is there any evidence to say there's been accidents or anything there? I get what you're saying, but is there evidence to say there's accidents there? Do you think with all the number of cars going back into the estate, to the north of the estate, there's going to be, what, 100 plus cars coming and going? I know it's a quiet estate, but is there evidence there to say that there are accidents or it's a hotspot or anything like that?
Well, the transport assessment's gone through the statistics with accidents as well, and there's nothing in the report that's concerning. I haven't got evidence here with me, but I could find it. But policy-based, we wouldn't want to be opening up a new access onto the main Lyndhurst Road, as obviously you're going to be stopping traffic, especially if you're trying to turn right. And so it's much safer to go through the residential area as per all the other phases. This is phase 9, and we've got, you know, all the other phases previously all go through the main spine road down to down to the south, down to Holborn. So yeah, there's nothing. Sorry, what I'm trying to say is it's an access we wouldn't look to support.
Okay, councillor Gillett.
So just a question. One of the objectors said that Wessex Water had stated that the current drainage system was insufficient, and that this was going to sort of create an overload to the system. I couldn't see any evidence of that in report. Did I miss it, or?
Wessex Water were formally consulted and they said no objection. It is reported in the consultee section. I can.
Thank you. Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've a few questions. Firstly, regarding nutrient spill, we've had issues on every Christchurch application recently about nutrient spill. It mentions on paragraph 154 about a Grampian condition. Could you explain what that is and how that mitigates the impact on the River Avon?
Yes, so Natural England has provided us with a calculator, which is the standardized ways of calculating the phosphate loads coming up from these kind of developments. So the developer has used that and given us the number, the expected phosphate loads which has been agreed. We have checked the numbers and we agree that the number is correct. So that now the developer will have to buy credits from some of the fish farms, which we have agreement with. Simon, do you know this section of the agreement? Section 33, I think. So the council, is, please don't quote me on the exact section. It's one of the sections. So we have agreements, we as in the BCP Council has agreements with Picton Fish Farm and 2 other fish farms where the applicants can buy credits from. So they'll have to buy the credits and submit or demonstrate to the officers that they have bought these credits as a pre-commencement. So before even they start developing it, they have to buy the credit. We could have secured it as a pre-occupancy because at the end of the day, only when these buildings are being used by people, that's when the impact happens. But imagine building all these 104 houses, and then there is no credit available for them to then go and buy from the fish farm. Then we just end up with like a white elephant. What are we going to do with these 104 houses? That's the reason why we insist that this is demonstrated as a pre-commencement, that this credit is available for them to secure. Make sense?
Yeah, so a Grampian condition is a agreement to secure this credit. Thank you very much. The other one, or a couple more, is the access ways that are shown through from Verno Lane, the footpaths. Are they to become public rights of way, or as part of this condition, as in permanent public rights of way?
I can answer that question. So the applicant has proposed to retain it as private. So some of the site is going to be adoptable by the council and some of it's private. But what I've done is I've put a clause in the section 106 that it is permissible for public use. So although the applicant will retain the land and ultimately responsible for the maintenance, public are able to then use those pathways. And so we have a condition to ensure that the pathways are constructed, and we're going to have all that information up front. But actually in the 106, there's a clause to ensure that the public are able to use those private sections of land.
Thank you. And that will be enduring?
Yeah.
Yes, another one. The children's play area, it was mentioned here that it was BCP going to be taking it over. I just wondered, obviously, Highcliffe and Watford Council operate facilities. Was it offered to Highcliffe and Watford? And secondly, is there a contribution to the maintenance, or are we looking for this to be produced and specification? Will it be built to BCP specifications? We obviously have a play strategy at the moment for BCP, and we want, if they're going to provide some play equipment, we want to know that it's decent and maintainable, whichever council decides to run it. What's the agreement on that? Thank you.
So the applicant is in conversation with the council's open space team, and council's open space have advised them to use our standards, as you were mentioning, to design the play area. As far as I can understand, the idea is for the developer to retain control, but we are securing a management plan by section 106. So the open space management plan will also tell us the design details, the equipment to be used for the design, and then how it's going to be managed over as many years. I think it's 30 years or probably for the rest, the lifetime of the development. I'm not very sure how long the open space team is going to ask for that. However, it's going to be secured by section 106.
Thank you. I was picking up on Councillor Dedman's comment about little piles of stuff, and it's a complaint we get on all play areas, and just to make sure that it is properly managed, whoever is going to be managing it, be it the council, or either this council or another council. So I've got a few questions, Chair. The other one is about the loss of BNG and the BNG assessment. I couldn't, and specifically regarding the trees. I know there's been a presentation on some of the trees that are being lost or of low quality, but I noticed that next to the Verno house is actually quite a stand of trees that's going, and what the offset is for that. Not just about birds, but also bat impact, because it's very close to some other areas that have got quite high bat populations.
So some of the trees will have to be removed because of their quality, and the council's tree officers have visited the site and they agree with the proposed tree removal. And we are securing additional woodland management, woodland enhancement through condition. So that's condition 8, which woodland enhancement and management plan to mitigate some of these impacts. In terms of the quality of the trees, we have the tree officers who assess the scheme available on Teams. Would you like them to, I can invite them to come and just have a quick chat with you?
Yeah, that would be useful.
Yes, thank you. So Sam or Andy, if one of you could please.
Yeah, so the trees to be removed are actually low quality, are not worthy of retention or are low quality. And it's considered that there's the landscaping plans, additional trees that will benefit the character of the area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. One more question. Sorry to monopolise the questions. If anybody else has got, if I'm taking the others off, then great. Mentioned about affordability, and we have a number of descriptions for affordability. Is there any description of what that affordability is going to be? Is it social rent? Is it part ownership? Part ownership, the same. Apologies, Vice Chair.
No, it's also in this report, paragraph 108 and paragraph 109. So paragraph 108 gives you the tenure type. So it's 70, basically we insist 70-30, but sometimes exact 70-30 is not possible because of the numbers. So what we have got is 67% rented and 33% share ownership.
Thank you. That, I think, concludes all the questions I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention on the back of Councillor Slade's question was regarding access and egress to Lyndhurst Road. At present, that stretch of road is actually national speed limit. The 40 mile an hour starts by the Carvery, I think, and starts again when you enter Hinton Admiral. But I seem to recall that the Roshot Hill development, that they've got a roundabout being proposed to go on the Lyndhurst Road to access into the new Roshot Hill development. So I just wonder whether there is an opportunity in the future for access and egress to be considered onto Lyndhurst Road.
That was approved back in 2016 before BCP. So if that application was to come forward, that wouldn't necessarily be approved again. So we need to think about that, and also we need to consider the application that's before us that doesn't have the access onto Lyndhurst Road. But my advice would be that it's something that we wouldn't want to support.
Okay. And my second point was, which Councillor Tarling already touched on, was the play equipment. All too often we've suffered in Christchurch with maintenance of play equipment. So I just wanted to make sure that, within those 106 agreements, can we have a ring-fenced opportunity to ensure that in 30 years' time that the play equipment is maintained, to a correct standard? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. You covered that point. Okay.
I don't think there is anything for me to answer there. We'll be securing by S106.
And Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a lot of questions as well. Basically, it's a bit worrying. I'm concerned about the conservation area. When I visited the site a couple of days ago, there's a lot of biodiversity on the site. There's nobody actually using the site to walk. I was the only person there. But I could hear lots of bird song. There's evidence of rabbits. There's a lot of life there. And I noticed also there's like backing onto Cornflower Drive. There's like a barrow, like a raised piece all the way along, and obviously that's going to support a lot of wildlife as well. That sort of thing. I didn't know if that was an ancient one or if it's recently made, you know, with other developments. So I just wondered what's going to be done about the biodiversity to protect the wildlife that's there and the birds and things, mainly.
Thank you. So to start with, the bund, which you have seen, which you are talking about the barrow, the raised land.
Yeah.
My understanding is that it's more recent. This is probably to stop the expansion of the builder's yard, or it's the separation of the builder's yard and the rest of the site. So that's what it's serving a practical purpose to some extent. About the loss of biodiversity, it has been acknowledged that with any greenfield site development, there will be a degree of loss, and we need to consider that in planning balance. So we are mitigating some of it by securing pre-commencement condition these reports of a reptile and these information. And also we are securing enhancement of landscape and trees, woodland management plan, woodland enhancing. Beyond that, the rest of it, probably unfortunately, we may have to lose some of the habitat which is currently used by birds. But it is also important to remember some of these birds actually like to stay near residential estates.
Yeah.
So the remaining open space, especially to the south here, they can still use that land, and because it's going to remain quite natural in character, this land can still be used by birds. But as I said, there will be a degree of harm, and that needs to be balanced against the benefit of the scheme, which is 104 units and all the other benefits. Thank you.
Number two, I've got a thing about flats. Is there outside space provision for people in the flats, like balconies or a garden around, shed, a communal garden around? Because I think that's really important.
I believe all flats have communal gardens. I do not think they have balconies per se. Let me see if I can show you. Sorry, previous image. So this building is the first block of flats. They do not have balconies, partially because that's not really the character. That at this building, if you have balconies, it's going to look a bit out of character compared to the other units, the way it's been designed. But all these flats have got like outdoor amenity space. So if I go back to the site plan, I'm struggling to see that. So this is the first, can you see my cursor there?
Yeah.
So that's the first block of flats, and you can see there's communal garden space at the back. And then obviously all flats. So this is one block of flats that probably has the least amount of community garden space, but it's located literally opposite the main play area.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, all dwellings should have adequate amenity areas, amenity space.
Third question. There's on because I know the area quite well as well. You know, on the A35 Lyndhurst Road, there's like a trench and there's pine trees as well. Are they going to be remaining? Because when I walked on the site, there is little boggy bits, and I assume that trench is important to drainage. So that's all going to remain, is it? And also the pine trees will block the noise of the A35 and things, and also pollution from the A35.
So are you talking about these, can you see my cursor? These pine
tree? Yeah.
Monterey pines, yes, they're all protected by TPOs. And there has been a long discussions with the developer when we were working with them to revise the scheme to maintain enough separation from the root protection areas of these pine trees so that these can be retained and can handle the pressure. So as you can see, I'm not sure if you can see, so the fence line for these new houses are quite far, so that you have this free open space, like a buffer space.
Yeah, because that's it's overgrown, but it's really important because it will protect the residents from pollution from the roadway and things. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my last question is, I couldn't work out from the diagrams. There's a railway station quite close by. It's Highcliffe, Watford. Hinton. Yeah, Hinton is quite close by. Will there be access to walk to the station so it'll be the boundary at the top, won't it? Will there be access to to be able to walk, you know, so residents on Cornflower Drive, for example, will they be able to walk through and access the station? Is there going to be access, walking access to the station from that estate and also thereby from lower down as well? Is there a walk through, not by car, but for people walking and cycling, because that's really important.
I'm happy to answer that question. Yes, so there
Great.
is a footpath to be created from the site to Lyndhurst Road. It is like an informal, you might have seen it, but it's to make it more formal across there. And then also the links further down, like you mentioned, so that it's not just this site, it's residents as well will be able to use those paths through the site and then up to Lyndhurst Road, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that would, be nice, Okay. So it's almost directly to the station, you know, it's like cutting it, not having to walk along Lyndhurst Road, but directly across then, Well,
Okay.
It's not as imagined. All right, thanks, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Pedwin.
Thank you. I've just got one question at the moment. Some of the objections talked about parking and inadequate parking. I notice condition 20 is very firm that it will only be allowed in the designated areas, but what is the capacity of the designated areas?
So the amount of car parking proposed is acceptable. There are 2 allocated parking spaces for the dwelling houses. Sorry, we're not on the site plan.
I can go back to the site plan.
Okay, so we've got a mix of allocated and unallocated parking. So the allocated is for the dwelling houses and unallocated for the flats. As you can see, there's like cluster areas of parking. And importantly, what we've got here is visitor parking as well, because what you find on some sites is that there isn't enough visitor parking. But on this site, we have got visitor parking as well. And what we wanted to do is ensure that those spaces for visitors was actually marked out, so it was clear where visitors can go, and that there is acceptable number of parking spaces. 152 parking spaces is the requirement in Zone D here, which is the suburban area, and the applicant's proposing the 154.
Plus 10.
And is that including the visitor parking? Or is that resident parking?
That's the resident parking.
Thank
and
you.
then you've got 10% as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sam.
So if there's a fallback position that we're taking into account, I can't tell from the report if that also includes any affordable housing. That would be my first question. And then my second one, just to get them all out, because my only other one would be on the highways. So there's no objection from highways. I can't tell from the report, but I'm assuming I can take it as read. If there's no highways objection, there cannot be an issue with emergency vehicle access. I can't see any specific consultation with the services, but I'm guessing that's covered by highways.
That's correct. We've got tracking diagrams to demonstrate that vehicles can enter and exit and turn, because obviously we've got the cul-de-sacs, and so there is sufficient space for emergency vehicles as well as the waste collection vehicles as well across the site.
And regarding the fallback permission, that included affordable housing, 40% again, but because the number is so low, it's only 38 units, so 40% of 38 is again lower, but it did include affordable housing.
So the same proportion but less, because it's a significantly smaller build. Okay.
Thank you. And if there's no more, just one from me. So obviously there was mention of the Highcliffe and Watford neighbourhood plan and the policy there, and I think also in the report you mentioned the allocation of the land in the local plan. Could you just say how it conflicts with the neighbourhood plan and how you think that's moved on? Thank you.
So part of the site has been proposed to be allocated in the neighborhood plan as accessible green space, AGS, accessible green space. And I think in my report, I'm just trying to find the correct paragraph, please bear with me. So in paragraph 64, of my report contains two diagrams. The first one shows the area which has been proposed to be allocated for accessible green space in the neighborhood plan. And the second one, I couldn't really plot it exactly because it's not easy to scale these plans. But as you can see, roughly, I have identified the area which has been allocated. And as you can see from the second diagram, which is figure 2, majority of this area is going to remain open. And this is what the Highcliffe neighborhood plan actually suggests. So if I may read from the neighborhood plan, it says that the proposed accessible green spaces are identified to provide additional publicly accessible green space. This is also important to remember. The site actually doesn't have any currently authorized public access. They should remain largely undeveloped and be managed for both allow recreational access and support and enhance the area's tree cover and biodiversity. So it doesn't preclude any development. It says it needs to largely remain open. And in my opinion, the plan does exactly that. So I think it's in line with what the neighborhood plan is expecting to achieve by this particular policy.
Okay, thank you for that. So if there's no further questions, we're going to debate. Councillor Gillett.
I just want to thank the officers for a really detailed and very clear report on this one. You know, bearing everything together, and obviously it's always difficult when there's a bit of green space that's being used, but bearing everything together and looking at the balances on that, I have to say I'm actually in favour of the grant on this development.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pedwin.
Yes, I'm on the whole, I think this is a good proposal. In many ways, it ticks all the boxes. We've got a very good mix of housing, still too many one-bed flats, but much better than most of the applications we get through to this committee and the Western Committee. Plenty of 2, 3 and even 4-bed houses, which you don't often get on applications. A very good level of affordable housing, and very often we get none at all or a measly contribution off-site. So this, in many ways to me, it ticks all the boxes. The concern is the possible harm to heritage, but given that it's not in any way going to damage the current buildings, the thatch is not even on the site anyway, I don't think any harm in the to heritage. It's quite clear from the heritage officer. It's at the medium range of less than substantial. So in other words, not too much harm at all. And I would be very happy to propose this, unless Councillor Geddes has already done that. I'm not sure.
No, you.
I'm happy to propose.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Salmon.
I was going to say I'll second that. I was going to propose if Marion didn't. I widely agree. I don't think it is as open and shut. It does go against the local plan. Not the local plan. No, it is the local plan, isn't it? The out-of-date local plan. I think it does conflict with that, but I think on the tilted balance, yeah, affordable housing, all of that. I'm happy to second that. I think we should approve.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin, did you indicate?
I concur with what they've said. Is basically I welcome 40% social housing, which is great, because and the developer, listening to the developer, they're obviously interested in building communities, not just fulfilling the government's housing numbers obligation, which is great. It's obviously well thought through. I welcome the children's play area, and I think when I walked on the land, it's a bit wild. I was the only one walking there, and it was quite a nice day. And I just think actually it would make more use of the open space if it's developed, the wall garden and the children's play area. The other thing I note as well, it's going to be safer for people to get to the train station from the Cornflower Drive side, because at the moment you wouldn't walk across wasteland at night, but you would if there are roads there and trees and lampposts. You would feel safer cutting across there to get to public travel, instead of using your own car, which is great as well. protecting the environment. You know, that's all I've got to say really. So I'm in favour as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm very interested to hear what you have to say, Chair, as it's in your ward and in your back garden. But I'm guessing you say keeping your powder dry to the end to sum up as your right as Chair there. Generally, a lot like the comments mentioned here by other councillors, I think we acknowledge it's a massive contribution to our housing requirement across BCP, and there's very few locations in Christchurch that we can develop. I do have concerns about the nutrients bill and the state of the River Avon, and you know, that's not an issue for the developer to deal with. It's the whole of Salisbury Plain and the whole of the catchment of the River Avon that's to blame, not just the little bit that comes through to us. Unfortunately, we, being the bottom end of the sewer of the River Avon, are affected by developments upstream. So I mention it because it's been quite a difficult condition. Glad that we're securing a condition. The other thing was that I mentioned briefly bats, and on other applications we've considered in the area, and I got to declare an interest. I'm a member of CHOG as well, and have worked with bat groups in the past, is that it does form part of the north-south Green Lane up to sort of Burton Common and some very significant wildlife areas where there are nightjars, a whole range of different bats that commute from Steamer Point Reserve to the north, and I'm glad that there's some tree cover going to be retained there. I am slightly concerned that we are losing a bit of the width there, but it's not continuous all the way up from the coast, from Steamer Point up to Burton Common or Gus Common. So you know, is it making it any worse? I think again, the balance. I think it's not. You know, I think that it's counterweight by the fact that we're getting some affordable housing in Christchurch, and obviously the large contribution to housing. So yeah, I'm hearing the room and the comments from one of the ward councillors. I'm minded to support it, but I'd like to hear from the other ward councillor what he thinks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Slade.
Thank you. I'm not against it. I just think the access can be better and should be better. So I don't know if I can support it, but I'm not against it. But going back to Councillor Martin, just so to be clear, that path that's being made better is only going to Lyndhurst Road, and there's no way in a million years you'd walk down Lyndhurst Road to get to Hinton Admiral. Never in a million years. There's a path there, but you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. There's no way you'd do that. You'd go through the Holborn estate, you'd go back onto Smugglers and up that way. So I think that just needs to be clear. But I'm not against it. I just think the access can be better.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So that's ward councillor, and also I live on the old part of the estate, 100-year-old former farmhouse, one of the old farmhouses or farm workers' houses. So I've seen over the last 30 years the development being built out, and certainly I have to admit, over my last 19 years since living on the estate, I have trespassed on the land like Councillor Martin. But as you say, it is so difficult to get on the land. This opens up the land and opens up accessibility to other areas, make life easier. I do take, and I know that certain times of the day, the key road around the estate can be busy with school times and whatever. I don't think it's ever gridlocked. I think people just need to take time. And obviously when we talk about 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, I know this estate never can get over 20 an hour. So that wouldn't be an issue. What did other people say? Parking, again, ample parking on driveways, but people do still, when they've got a driveway, they still park on the road for whatever reason. So I don't think that's going to be any worse. And similarly, the contribution to schools and the medical practices are made. I know there was talk about the Highcliffe, but I know the Christchurch practice, I think there's still capacity there. And again, the contribution will expand to those areas. So on balance, yeah, I don't, conservation areas, they have a reason why they are conservation areas, and But on balance, I think the public benefit outweighs it as reports. I'm also in favour. So thank you. Any last speakers? So we have a proposal by Councillor Predovin, seconded by Councillor Salmon, as approved as set out. Were there any updates on?
Just a couple of points. Number one, the urban design officer has clarified there are actually Juliet balconies to the rear elevation of the flats. So yeah, it's in the latest elevation plans, they've provided Juliet balconies in the flats. And the second point is, unfortunately, we couldn't secure any educational contribution because we cannot secure a contribution unless there is a identified project, and we couldn't identify any project. So thank you.
Okay. So all happy. So if you are in favour of approval as set out, show now, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
If you're against the proposal, show now. And abstentions.
And 1 abstention.
Okay, so that application is approved as set out. Thank you. We go straight in now to 6B, which is 55 Highfield Road, and that is presented by Mr. Henry. And we see your presentation.
Hi, Chair. Just,
are you able to make it a larger presentation mode?
Yeah, I'm just doing that right now, Chair.
Thank you.
Is everyone able to see that? Yeah, come up.
Yes, that's perfect. So carry on. Thank you.
Okay. This proposal is at 55 Highfield Road in Bournemouth for a change of use from a house in multiple occupation, Class C4, to a large house in multiple occupation, Class sui generis, and the erection of a bin and cycle stores. 55 Highfield Road is a 2-storey detached dwelling house in the Ensbury Park area of Bournemouth. The property already benefits from extensions to the front with a porch, a large ground floor extension of approximately 8 metres, and a large dormer to the rear. The grounds around the property are laid in hard standing, and to the rear is a good-sized amenity area and a detached outbuilding. There is 1 tree to the rear and no other vegetation. No on-site parking is proposed. The immediate vicinity is predominantly residential, and there's a range of architectural styles and finishes, and the site is close to 2 primary schools. It's close to main roads where they can people can access buses to areas for employment, shops, and so forth. This shows you the extensions here. This is the 8-meter ground floor extension that has been approved through an application, a prior approval application. The dormer is allowed through permitted development. Here is the rear of the property. You can see here is the outbuilding, and this is where the bicycles will be stored. This aerial shows you the nearby schools. Over here, Winton Primary School, and just down over here, you can see my cursor is more down St. John's Primary School. Just to give you a bit of background, the property is already a small HMO that's for up to 6 people, and presently still retains its permitted development rights. And there's also a current application been submitted for a lawful development certificate, which is still pending. And so this application is merely to change the use to add one additional person to stay in the building, which changes its use to a large HMO. No extensions or external alterations are proposed. As such, there would be no further impact on the character or appearance of the area, and there would be no impact on residential amenity, or would be the same as currently existing. The number of HMOs in the area, the HMOs you can see here in red, and the amount is less than 10% within the area, which accords with policy. And the only downfall of the proposal would be, I would say, is that there's no provision of on-site car parking. Policy, the SPD parking requires all HMOs to have at least one parking on site. However, having said that, it's a pre-existing situation. The existing HMO does not have any on-site parking provision, so the proposal doesn't make the situation any worse. And indeed, the Highway Authority have been consulted and have stated that the lack of car parking is on balance acceptable to the local Highway Authority due to the existing shortfall. Therefore, the LHA raises no objections on highways grounds. Also, the proposal does propose landscaping all around the property, to the front, sides, and down the back. So that would also have a benefit to the area, improve the visual amenity of the site. So in conclusion, the proposal is acceptable in principle. It would have no impact on the existing character or appearance of the area, would not result in any impact on residential amenity to neighbours. The proposal meets the HMO licensing regulations and therefore will provide a good standard of living for the additional occupant. And it would not result in any overly excessive number of HMOs in the area. However, weighing the shortfall of the parking provision against the benefits of the proposal, in this instance, the proposals would outweigh that loss of parking provision. The proposal would contribute to financial mitigation contributions towards the heathlands and the New Forest, as well as provide an additional accommodation towards the council's housing target. As such, it is recommended to council to approve the proposal.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so if we now go to public speakers, please.
Yes, we have two people speaking in objection, David Higgins and Michael Cracknell, if you'd like to come forward when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair and other members of this committee. My name is David Higgins and I'm a resident of Highfield Road. I'm actually an ex-member of staff for over 40 years here, so it's interesting coming back and see how it's changed. I'm speaking today on behalf of the community which are deeply concerned by the proposed expansion of the 55 Highfield Road into a 7-person sui generis HMO. I've separated the info into 3 sections, and the first which is the issue of parking and safety. Our primary objection is the severe impact this will have on the highway safety and parking stress. Highfield Road is already at breaking point. By increasing the occupancy to 7 adults, each potentially with their own vehicle, the council is effectively inviting further congestion into a street that cannot absorb it. This isn't just about the inconvenience of finding a space, it is a direct safety issue. When the road is choked with overspilled parking, sight lines are restricted. We have many families with young children on this road. Every additional car searching for a space or parking precariously on corners increases the risk of a tragic accident. Second section, impact on families and accessibility. For many of us, access to safe and nearby parking is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Families here are managing prams, toddlers and babies, often unloading children and shopping multiple times a day. We must also consider those in our community who are vulnerable residents recovering from surgery or mothers managing physical recovery after childbirth. I know my next door neighbour in particular is one who has had to go through all of this. For them, being forced to park streets away and walk long distances isn't just a minor inconvenience, it is a practical hardship that affects their health, well-being and safety. When parking pressures increases, it disproportionately affects those with caring responsibilities or health limitations. And final section, infrastructure and environment. Furthermore, we must address the physical state of our infrastructure. Highfield Road already suffers from an unsuitable and deteriorating road surface. Adding the high intensity traffic and frequent delivery movements associated with the 7-person HMO will only accelerate this damage. This increased traffic also means more vehicle idling and cruising for spaces, which directly increases the amount of pollution our children breathe in. This application runs contrary to BCP's goals of creating healthy, sustainable residential environments. The conclusion is, in summary, this proposal represents an overdevelopment of a site. It fails to provide adequate parking, threatens the safety of our children, places an unfair burden on those with accessibility needs, and harms our local environment. We urge the committee to protect the safety and character of Highfield Road by refusing this application. Thank you for your time.
Dear panel, I have to say that I'm here today with very mixed emotions. Disappointment, as I don't think it should be necessary. The recommendation to accept the retrospective application for 55 Highfield Road is quite frankly an abusive process. The question is whether this committee has the will to insist that the terms of the existing approved plan permission is enforced. Anger, that it seems the developers are setting and moving their own goalposts. The original permission to develop the property to this level was refused. The developers came back with a second plan based on 6 accommodation units, including off-road parking space. This was passed despite numerous objections from local residents who now have to suffer the consequence of this decision. These consequences are not short-term, they are permanent. Parking on Highfield Road is not easy, not only for residents, as it is used by people in other streets who don't have on-street parking, and it is used as an area for concerned parents to drop off their children to attend Winton and Glenmore schools at one end of the road and St John's First School at the other end of the street. Frustration that this is not even a case of trying to bolt the stable door after the horse has bolted, because it seems that the council are holding the door open. The papers for this proposal suggest that advice has been sought from various departments within the council. The question in my mind is how many people have actually visited the site to witness the problems we have as local residents. By this, I mean not during the working day, but on an evening when the residents are home and the road is congested and parking is a nightmare. As for the road itself, it is already in such a poor state. It seems there is a collapsed pipe underneath the surface, and consequently driving down Highfield Road is more like off-road driving. If you are in a similar position to the local residents of Highfield Road, you would feel just as angry at how our concerns as local residents seem to have been dismissed out of hand and seem to bear no weight to the council officers dealing with the case. Highfield Road is a narrow cul-de-sac lined with family homes, not HMOs. Yet here is a property development company that has clearly breached its plan permission and has carried on regardless to achieve exactly what they want, which is not to benefit the local community.
Okay, are you?
I understand.
Drawing to an end.
I understand that Bournemouth Christchurch Pool Council is unable to achieve its housing targets and therefore have to rely upon housing profiteers. But why should that be at the expense of locals? It seems there is no consequence of ignoring the terms of the granted permission, but in fact is at risk of being rewarded today. This isn't NIMBYism.
Sorry, we'll ask you just to wrap up now then, please, Mr. Cronall. You've had your allocated time.
Thank you for your chair, but I think this absolutely underlines the value of local democracy. You clearly are not allowing us to speak and have our say. You're making decisions that impact upon our lives.
Enough now. I know, but the times limit everyone adheres to. If we let you have more, then the applicant will have to have more. So if you can take a seat now, please. And the other speaker, please.
Thank you. So speaking in support, we have Alexander Osborne. You'll have to come forward whenever you're ready.
Good morning. My name is Alex. I'm the owner and the landlord of 55 Highfield Road. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all today. Firstly, I want to acknowledge that the concerns raised by our neighbours, and we understand that people do care deeply about the street, particularly around parking and safety and access and how properties are lived in day to day, and we do genuinely respect their opinions. Our intention has never been to create any problems for the community, but to improve a previously tired property and manage it responsibly. All works completed on the property have been carried out under permitted development, and whilst it has taken several applications to get to this point, these applications were to simply confirm that the works carried out were lawful. Today's decision is not whether there should be a HMO in this existing property. That position has already been established. The house is lawfully operating as a 6-person HMO, and the C4 status has been confirmed through a previous application. The question before the members today is whether increasing occupancy from 6 residents to 7 is going to create a material planning harm. And case law and planning decisions across the country all concur that when an occupancy of a HMO is increased by 1, it doesn't. And whilst we understand the importance on weight of policy CS24, it specifically relates to a change of use from class C3, which is not what is being proposed today, and therefore is less relevant. The council's professional consultees have assessed the same question, whether increasing occupancy from 6 residents to 7 creates material planning harm. And the Highway Authority has reviewed parking, access and safety and has raised no objection, confirming that the parking arrangements are acceptable in this specific context and the proposed cycle and bin storage are appropriate. We have proposed to increase the size of the side access gate to accord with the set standards for bicycle access and has designated a clear unobstructed path to the bike store, whilst also being able to retain plenty of soft landscaping to the rear garden. We recognise the residents have concerns about parking on the road, and planning must consider whether the proposal would materially worsen that situation. The professional highways assessment concludes that it does not. The parking standard for a 7-bedroom HMO is no different to the existing expectation, and we are asking just to add 1 additional occupier, not an additional 7 as it has been suggested in some objections. I can also confirm that of the existing tenants, only 1 owns a car, which is lower than most single-family homes. To address concerns about overcrowding, the recommendation includes a condition to restrict occupation to a maximum of 7 individuals. That is 1 person per bedroom, preventing the scenario described in several objections. We have also designed the accommodation to reduce the intensity of use. The bedrooms significantly exceed the minimum space standards, meaning residents rely less on shared areas and associated disturbance is reduced. And our aim is to provide stable, longer-term housing for working people in the local area and a form of housing that supports the community rather than the transient and often far more disruptive student occupation. At a policy level, the proposal aligns with the Council's housing mix objectives by providing smaller and accessible accommodation for working residents. It represents an efficient use of an existing home within the spatial strategy for urban areas, and it supports a sustainable transport approach given the location and the cycle provision, with no highways impact identified. Members are therefore being asked to consider a modest intensification of an already lawful use, supported by the Council's professional consultees, including the Highways Authority, Environmental Health and Waste Services, and controlled by clear conditions. This proposal supports local working residents, aligns with planning policy, and has been designed to minimise neighbour impact and has been assessed by every professional consultee as acceptable. We are simply asking to provide one additional home without material harm. In the absence of any strong reason for refusal or evidence of proposed harm, we respectfully ask members to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we also have Ward Councillor Richard Herritt.
Morning all. This feels a bit odd, to be honest, sat at this end. You'll have already heard from some of the residents of the road and the impact this application will have on them, the community. It's a road I know well, and it's been my walking route to drop my son off at school for what feels like the last decade, but it's probably been slightly less time. The house has been an HMO for some time, but not in planning terms. That only happened in 2023 when a certificate of permitted development was given. Been operating as a 3 or 4 bed HMO for 10 years at that point, and there's been an Article 4 direction in the Old Borough of Bournemouth in place since 2011, which is important, and I'll come to that in a bit. A few neighbours objected at that time, their view that it had been a student accommodation for some time and that allowing it to change to an HMO would set it on a path that changed significantly what it was. As councillors, we know that HMOs and student accommodations in this term are one and the same, but I think in the community that caused a bit of concern that it would kind of accelerate a change that we would see. Residents went on to seeing applications to extend the house, taking it from 3 or 4 beds through to the 6 bed prior notification application, with permitted development permission awarded in February 2025. It would appear, though, that the developer had no intention of actually building that scheme, as they built something else instead, not using the submitted layout and extending the roof, before then coming back for a lawful development permission, which is awaiting sign-off at the moment. With the 6 bed version has a gym with the permission to basically use that gym to convert to a 7 bed HMO in front of you today. Feels to me and the residents like the developers have just threaded their way through the complexities of the planning system, so there is minimal opportunity for objection. They announced on social media their plans for the property, and residents told me they tried to ask questions via that route but were ignored or deleted in response. This application, therefore, should actually have been for a large single-storey extension, dormer roof and expansion to the 7 bed HMO, has become a single-bedroom addition through exploitation of prior approval, permitted development, and finally an actual application. It's had 2 refusals for schemes that are minimally different to this one, and in breach of the CS41 that they were refused previously, and exposed the planning system as essentially open to abuse if you can figure your way through it, removing residents' voices, the ability to object is made to look like an overreaction when some of them could see this coming. Due to the report laid out, it appears all I'm left objecting to is non-compliance with the SPD. There is not a single parking space for the property, and as you've heard from the residents, there is really significant issues with parking along this road. There are 3 further licensed HMOs along this road, including the neighbouring number 53 having 6 beds. It's a street that is a popular drop-off for the nearby schools and is essentially a dead-end rat run, which always feels like a bit of a contradiction, but I would have to show you for you to understand that. The reference to the Article 4 direction is that the conversion in HMO to paragraph 31 is that 9% of the properties are HMOs in the area. Given this one existed without permission up to 2023 for 10 years, it's highly likely this number is much higher than the 9%. And without someone going road to road and doing full investigations, unlikely that we'll know. There is also a condition that is only 1 person per room to be let. I'm told by the neighbours that a couple has already moved into this property, and given the developer's behaviour so far, I have little faith they will abide by that. Nor is it a particularly enforceable policy, as establishing the amount of people living in a property is incredibly difficult to establish, and with council tax, 1 band D contribution for this 6 bed, 12 person capacity property, by the way, being picked up by the landlord, it would be nigh on impossible. It's no coincidence, in my opinion, that the house has been designed to hit minimum spacing requirements for 2 people per bedroom and allow occupancy for up to 14. I would ask in the least the committee please consider how they might practically restrict this to an actual 7 occupants. And I would also finally ask that if we're going to consider the parking SPD inconsequential, as I've heard in 3 of the HMO call-ins in recent months, they are at least honest with our residents about it.
Okay, thank you, councillor. So, Mr. Henry, did you want to come back on probably the biggest point about the planning history? Thank you.
Yes. Well, the C4 use has a lawful development certificate from a couple of years ago or so. The rear extension, ground floor rear extension, has a prior approval from the council, and the rear dormer would come under permitted development, where there's no need to submit a formal planning application to the council.
Okay, and we're obviously just looking at the change of use, but in respect of the actual building, that's followed all planning policies.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. And Ms. Holbrook, can I just ask you to comment on the parking and the traffic? Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to respond to some of the questions raised. So the application site is in Zone D, where it was quite rightly pointed out that there is no parking for the existing lawful C4 use. Now, the parking SPD requires one parking space for a C4 use, which this site doesn't. And for a sui generis, so the 7-bedroom, it also requires one. So the assessment here is if the existing required one and it doesn't, and the proposed requires one and it hasn't got one, when you make a balance, there's no net difference when you look at what the SPD requirement is. Now, I do hear lots of issues to do with the existing parking issues within the road. It's outside of this planning process, but I would suggest looking at maybe residence parking permits. As I said, it's not something that my team can look at, but that is something that I would perhaps look at exploring, because we did include an informative note that the applicant should remind future residents that they wouldn't be eligible for a parking permit if a scheme was to come forward by the local authority. Also, just to mention that with this site, they have got really good cycle parking. We've got really good access made towards a dedicated cycle store at the rear, with cycle parking for every resident living in the property. And so there's no objections based on the SPD. And it's just extra advice really for local residents listening to obviously the issues with on-street parking, whether that might help with those issues. But based on policy, there is no objections to the application from the local highway authority. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So open up to questions. Councillor Canavan?
Yes, I just want to go back over this planning history, if I may, because as I understand it, the proposal to change from C4 to sui generis was refused in 2024. So this isn't just a change of use, is it? I mean, this is a change of use in the same way as that was. It was, as I understand it, that was refused in 24, and now we're considering it again on a scale which is even bigger than it was when it was refused previously. And in the intervening period, as I understand it, the developer has built something which wasn't in accordance with the original plans, and has now come back to the council to get a certificate to say it was lawful, and that decision is still outstanding. So I'm struggling to understand why we are recommending approval for this project when you're still outstanding a decision on whether or not what they've done is lawful or not.
Okay, and Mr. Gould?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep this as simple as possible, but in fact, the ward councillor who spoke a few moments ago probably summed it up quite nicely, actually. So a few years ago, they applied under full planning application for the change of use and the physical works that they wanted to do to the building. So they packaged it all up in one application. That was a legitimate consideration for us in the planning department to look at things like the size of the dormer, the change of the use from, say, C4 to sui generis, and that's why those applications were refused. what the applicant has subsequently done is gone back and sort of compartmentalised the situation and exercised the number of different planning tools that are out there to achieve the physical works through a prior approval extension, which was just the single-storey ground floor rear extension, and then a subsequent lawful development certificate application for the works to the roof, the large dormer to the rear. When we have applications like that, we don't have the full ability to deploy our planning assessment and our judgment. We have to go by the set criteria which is set out in the General Permitted Development Order, i.e. PD rights. And then it becomes more of a checklist exercise. So providing your works are within these parameters, that's it. It's okay. We don't get to pass a judgment and a view on it as the planning authority. So that's what they've done through to establish the physical works. And then with the change of use, as you've heard, they were able to, after they had their planning application refused, they were able to actually come back with a lawful development certificate to demonstrate that the C4 use had been in existence for 10 years, which they did. And again, if they can provide sufficient evidence to demonstrate that, as the planning authority, our judgment is reduced significantly. So that's why that got approved. So what you're faced with today is the application from the C4 to the sui generis. And as you've already heard, it boils down to 6 people to 7 people. So members need to decide whether that's acceptable in terms of the character and appearance of the area or the impact on neighbours, or you've heard obviously from Mrs. Holbrook around the parking situation. So I hope that helps. People might not like the way that this has happened and the incremental way, but there's nothing wrong with it because government puts out the tools that say you can do a lawful development certificate, you can exercise prior approval, you can submit a full planning application.
But we are still pending a decision, aren't we, on that lawful development? Is that right?
Yes, but that one is actually ready for sign off now, and it is, the recommendation is that the works are lawful. Yeah.
Any other points, Mr. Councillor Canavan?
Well, I shouldn't say my comments.
Okay, all right. Councillor Gillett.
My understanding, just my understanding, if you say you've got essentially a history in terms of C4 going back to before the Article 4, that one of the when you come to the council and you apply for that, one of the conditions that they put back to you is that you go onto the HMO register at that point, and this property isn't on the HMO register. So has it? So actually, have we actually got to that point? Because that's essentially, if it's not, if you haven't completed all of those conditions, then have you actually accepted the C4 registration?
So, Mr. Henry, do you want to come on that?
That's outside the planning policy remit. It's a separate matter. We just deal with the policies in the development plan, which which there are no policies stating that they have to get an HMO license. That's through a different legislation.
Okay, and which team, Mr. Gould, would that need to go through?
I believe it would just be licensing. There'd be a particular, whether that's in the housing, but like housing licensing. So yeah, as Mr. Henry has said, that is separate. All we're looking at from a planning point of view is there enough evidence when they submit that lawful development certificate to establish the existing use as a C4 HMO? Are they able to provide enough evidence to show that there was 10 continuous years on the balance of probability, which is the test? And obviously they went through that process, and we said that yes, there was, and that hence why it became lawful.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Henry, with regards to you've got a condition about maximum of 7 people. How would that be monitored and enforced, please?
That would be a case. We wouldn't have officers actively pursuing or monitoring outside the property, unfortunately. it would be a matter of where the council is informed of such a breach, and then enforcement then would go out and investigate.
Okay, thank you. And I know some other HMOs, we've always asked for a management plan to understand who's living in the property, and in particular have a contact number. Is that something which you've added in the addendum and we can consider?
Yes, Chair. It requests for contact details in instances where there is a antisocial behaviour happening. So yes, that was added yesterday.
Okay, that's great. Any final questions, Councillor Tarling?
Yeah, just picking up on the SPD, I noted, and it's more of a policy question, because I noticed, I've just a look on the parking issue along Highfield Road, and there's I don't know if it's standard for this part of Amesbury Park, but a lot of drop curbs and a lot of people forecourt sort of parking. Is there a current limit or stop on drop curbs applications in this part of Bournemouth at the moment?
It depends on the size of the forecourt. So residents can apply for drop curbs if the forecourt reaches minimum standard, which is on the council's website, and that's carried out by our drop crossings team. But what you find with a lot of older properties, as you mentioned in Amesbury Park and also in the Winton area, is the forecourts are very narrow. And so you can't actually fit a vehicle on, which is why a lot of properties don't have on-street parking, because they tend to be of an older type of property. So then you do have more pressure on the road. And I do acknowledge that then causes congestion. So it is about people making travel choices. And in this instance, the applicants made sure that every resident has access to really good cycle parking with, really good access, which, a lot of HMOs, they don't have that. So what we're trying to do here is ensure that residents have options for sustainable modes of travel to deter them from using the road. And that's why I mentioned perhaps the residents' parking scheme is required in this area, which residents can look to do. But it's nothing that I can get, shall we say, as part of this application. But it is an issue where you do have heavy on-street reliance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So is there no more questions? We're going to debate, and I think Councillor Canavan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can't help reflecting back onto the last committee meeting that we held when we considered a application for a HMO elsewhere, and we refused it on the basis that it would be represent a poor standard of residential amenity for future occupiers, and that it would have an impact on neighbouring residential amenity as well, and also because of the lack of parking. Now, it seems to me that we're not a million miles away from that situation with this application. It clearly breaches the SPD, and for planning officer to say it doesn't make the situation any worse, I mean, I find that absolutely baffling. It's clearly in breach of the SPD now, but so you're not going to, we just decided not to enforce it. So say, well, we're not enforcing it now, we're not going to enforce it in the future. That's hopeless. I mean, what reassurance does that give to residents? So it clearly will have an impact, Chair. But the other issue for me is this question of enforcement around the number of people that are occupying this premise or proposed to occupy these premises. I know because I've experienced it in my own ward, that even when you have HMOs, which are supposed to have a certain number of people in them, that number gets exceeded. I know that. And I know that when residents have raised that objection to the planning department, they say, well, you have to prove it. Now, how can a resident possibly do that? So they're abrogating the responsibility to enforce their own conditions. So for me, this is exactly the same. So it's not something that I could possibly support.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Councillor Gillett.
Just taking that one step further, I think in in terms of how it is enforced, it's enforced when our licence department go round and they do an inspection on the property. But if the property is not on the register, it's not going to be inspected. So and this is also an issue which comes into the fact that we talk about this 10% threshold, and from that perspective, where these properties again aren't on the register, then they're not being counted within the 10% threshold.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I just I find it a bit shocking, the whole layout. I mean that they've got one kitchen and what a so-called gym, and you're losing the gym. You know, you're losing that communal space, and also the kitchen has been used by 6 people. It's now expected to be used by 7, or as Councillor Kavanagh so rightly points out, it could end up being 14 because you could have couples in each of the rooms. And I just find it shocking, and the kitchen itself's windowless. It's just shocking that you expect residents to live in that sort of way. I know this isn't a planning issue, but I think really as a council, we've got to look at what we will and won't licence, you know, and how much minimal communal space there should be within a residence, because it's just shocking, really. The residents have got their room and then a shared kitchen, which is probably just very functional, not pleasant to sit in. And people need to have a home where they can bring friends back to. And that's why communal space is really important. And I think to allow this to happen is just abhorrent, really. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tyler.
Yeah, I think the fact our officers recommending it for grant is as Mr. Gould's pointed out, it's, you know, it's not in breach of any planning laws, and I hear what the residents are saying, and I have a similar HMO in my street, which, you know, I think when we went through the process of having in Christchurch we don't have the requirement of 10%, but you know, the impact is not as bad as it seems. Each road's different. I am concerned that this has been effectively a 7-person HMO by cutting off bits of the elephant differently, using lawful possessions and prior notice of developments and the various different things to get there. But you know, that, as Mr. Gould has said, is something that the planning system is there. We're not here to correct that, unfortunately. Neither can we. You know, I fear there's probably not a lot we can do except for the SPD. And the SPD, as we've heard many times, is a guidance document. It's not, you know, we can put it in the tilted balance of things to consider. But our officer said quite clearly here that it's a no worse. So I'm really conflicted over this. I can't believe we're having a conversation about one person and one bedroom and taking so much time to discuss it. But it's the nature of local representation. We're here discussing as much time on this as we were 100 and odd ones previously. I'm struggling to support it, but I'm struggling to find a reason how we could reject it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Salmon.
So yeah, as others have pointed out, we can't sort out the mess that is local democracy or planning. It is very similar to last month's application, I feel. Well, I think there is a difference in that the fact that this is only 1 bedroom does make me feel the tilted balance isn't that heavy, and actually there is a great degree of subjectivity, I would say, around specifically CS41 for quality of design, which features in our local plan. And actually, I would like to propose refusal in my mind. So the change of use from a 6-person house with multiple occupancy, so to a 7-person thing, so going from 6 to 7, I do think that is an intensification. That's a material intensification of the occupation in what is a fairly constrained residential street. Where you've got that, you've got more, not just parking, you've actually got more because these are independent people. You know, this isn't just one more bedroom with a 10-year-old kid in there. This is another, as the applicant has said, working age people will be going and toing back and forth from work, will have social lives, things like that, that people have a right to. That, in my mind, gives an increase to the general disturbance and harm, you know, inflicted on the neighbours and whatnot. I think that means it conflicts with CS41, so design quality. I think it also means it's in confliction with the Bournemouth district-wide local thing, the 6.17. And I think you could also argue that it's in conflict with 135F of the National Planning Policy Framework, which says you've got to secure a high standard of amenity for existing and future users, which I think, based on what we've heard today, this doesn't do. I'm happy to propose refusal under those grounds. I'd obviously be guided by officers on how to word that in the correct technical way. But yeah, I'm happy to propose that for refusal. I think we should be consistent.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gould, if you want to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just listening to obviously some of the debate from members there, just a few points I just want to come back on, and maybe sort of some caution on the approach that might be about to take place. Firstly, obviously there was reference by Councillor Canavan to the last committee where an application came forward. I think it was Richmond Wood Road in Charminster, and just to say that, you know, in our view as officers, we feel that this is different to that. In that scenario, you were dealing with a C3 dwelling house at that point, which was going to a sui generis. Here you're dealing with an already lawful C4 use where there can be, or I believe there is 6 people residing. So, as Councillor Salmon has just said, actually the net gain is 1 person. Now, it's still within the gift of the members to decide that that intensification is so harmful to the character and appearance of the area and neighbouring residential amenity, of course. But I just wanted to stress that, you know, that in your officer's view would be a fairly weak position to defend on an appeal. There was also comments made about the quality of the accommodation for the residents. Again, that came up on the application in Richmond Wood Road last month, and we've looked at this application in lieu of that. And if you look at the floor plans, for example, on the previous application in Richmond Wood Road, there was concern about some of the bedrooms having an outlook just across a very narrow alleyway onto a fence. Here you'll note that the windows are generally forward or rearward facing, so they have a much better outlook. Obviously, Mr. Henry has looked at the sizes of the rooms, and so we feel that there are differences between that previous application on that other site in Charminster and this one here, and also the fact that this is already a lawful C4 use. There was a comment a few moments ago about the kitchen. Again, we've looked at the size of the kitchen. We feel that that is adequate for 7 people. There was a comment about there being a lack of a window. Well, there is a door to that kitchen. I don't know myself whether that door has a window in it, but you know, if it does, then it obviously allows light to come into that space, natural light to come into that space. And the other thing, Chair, is there's been discussion around the enforceability. The reality is that, you know, given the limited resource of the council's planning department, you know, our enforcement team are not able to be entirely proactive on everything out there, checking every condition on every planning permission. It does inherently rely on the reporting of, you know, residents into our enforcement. There's a route that people can email in and, you know, bring to our attention alleged breaches of planning control. So, but I would again urge caution that you would want to be looking at a reason for refusal based on the fact that you just don't trust the applicant to run it as a 7-person HMO. That we have the conditions, they could be enforceable, but again, you know, obviously it might also rely on, you know, people actually reporting stuff in through the appropriate channel if it was felt there was a breach of that condition going on. And finally, just on the parking situation, I just wanted to clarify the point that Mrs. Holbrook was talking about and which Councillor Cadavan wasn't entirely happy about. I think the point that Mrs. Holbrook was making was that as a C4 HMO, i.e. up to 6 people, the parking SPD says the parking requirement is 1 space. A sui generis, i.e. 7+ people HMO, also has the same parking requirement in terms of the policy requirement. So that's why the comment came that there was no additional harm. Obviously, the site doesn't have on-site parking, and I believe it never has. But also, I'd also members to think about the fact that once upon a time, maybe 10 years ago, 11, 12 years ago, this would have been a bona fide C3 dwelling house. And, you know, the parking requirement would have been greater for its use as a C3 house. So you could take the argument and the line that actually the stress that it's placing on the highway is less in policy terms by not being a C3 and being a HMO, whether it's C4 or sui generis, because the parking policy requirement is less than it would have been for a house. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that was useful. Councillor Penvin.
Actually, Mr. Gould has made a lot of the points that I was going to make about the application that we looked at the last committee. As he's pointed out, that was not like this in many ways because it was an existing family house. It was not already an HMO, and it was not just the parking was one of the issues, but it was also, as he said, the outlook from some of the rooms against a blank wall, and various other issues. The access down the side to where the bicycle store was, it was barely wide enough to wheel a bicycle down. So there were lots of issues. Because it's an existing 6-person HMO, and this is just adding one person, to my mind, it's a different issue, although I can appreciate why residents do not like it. And certainly if this was an application for the first use as an HMO, I would feel very differently about it, I'm sure. The other point is that now, given that it's could be a 7-person and it's a new situation, in the addendum, we've got the outline for insisting on a management plan, which doesn't exist now. So that is a benefit, hopefully, to residents and to the local area, possibly to the residents of the HMO as well. I don't know. So, like others, I'm very conflicted on this. I think under planning terms, it's very difficult to find a watertight reason for refusal. I don't like it, but that's not the same thing. So I'm conflicted.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Councillor Salmon, from what you heard from Mr. Gould, what policies are you?
So I think I would lean heavily on CS 41 of the Bournemouth Core Strategy and Policy 6.17 of the Bournemouth District-wide Local Plan, because in my mind it is the intensification. And, you know, there's the apocryphal story about the frog in boiling water, you know, and you turn it up slowly enough and at no point is it, oh, well, this is too hot. And I get why all of our council departments and teams can't go, oh, this change from 6 to 7 is unacceptable. So I understand why there is no objection from highways and so forth. But what I can also see is that actually this level of intensification is harmful to the residents, the existing residents on this street. And that's why I would refuse it. That is what I think would be defensible at if this came to appeal, which I don't think actually was the case in last month, because we can argue, I think quite strongly, that there is that intensification. You know, this is a change from 6 to 7, that is a material thing on most people living there, but also that it's so small on the tilted balance. You know, this is one extra bedroom. This isn't solving our housing crisis by any means in the same way the last application we were looking at. In my mind, that means actually the tilted balance is very lightly weighted in favour of development, and actually the harm that exists, much as it can't be identified by our institutions because it is just a change from 6 to 7, I think all of us who know what it's like in the real world, based on a testimony from residents, based on a testimony from the ward councillor, I think we can go, oh no, this is why we have a planning committee. This is why this is a decision that's voted on by the elected representatives here today. I think we can go, no, subjectively there is a breach of CS 41 and 6.17. That's what I go for. I don't think I would particularly talk about parking specifically. I would be talking about the intensification. That's what I would be leaning on in language. I don't know if that's correct, if that is reading CS41 correctly and understanding how that would be seen at appeal. So I'll be guided by officers. I'm happy to be told, no, Councillor Salmon, that's total rot. That will get thrown out at appeal, absolutely, definitely, and costs will be awarded. We've got Budget Council coming up next week. You know, we have to bear that in mind. We can't be gung-ho with refusing stuff that will get thrown out at appeal. There's the danger of costs, but I think this is a defensible reason.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Canavan, are you in agreement with those? Anything else to add?
No, completely agree with that. Completely agree with that, and all the reasons that Councillor Salmon has outlined. I think this is a totally unacceptable application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Slade.
I'm not sure I agree with it. I sympathise with the residents. I don't like it. I'd love to see a way for us to refuse it. If it goes to appeal, I'm not convinced we win it. If we approve it, we condition it, we can deal with the conditions, and we've got the enforcement, we've got the number of 7 people, we can deal with it. The onus and the obligation is on the residents to then report it, and for us as an authority to deal with it. I sympathise with them, but it goes to appeal. I'm convinced we lose. We've got costs, and it can't be managed. I think we have to go with officers, approve it, unfortunately, and deal with the management plan and deal with the enforcement. And we've then just got 7 in there. I don't like it, but unfortunately, that's what I see it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clements.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I want to say that I am generally quite supportive of HMOs. I lived in between 2 HMOs for a while. Both managed very well and, no problems, absolutely fine. But I have to say I agree with all of the objections that have been put forward so far by my colleagues. Particularly in terms of poor amenity. And I know it's only adding one more person, one more bedroom, and it might seem a little bit churlish to say, oh, that's resulting in overcrowding, but actually, on this occasion, I think it probably is. And I also think with the parking, that just because they didn't have the expected parking provision previously when it was for 6 people doesn't make it okay to say, oh well, in that case it doesn't matter, we didn't have it before, so why should we have it now? I don't think that's acceptable.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Gould, did you want to come back on the policies quoted and your views? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to explore a bit more. I mean, Councillor Salmon has said that he feels that going from 6 to 7 people is a harmful intensification. Might not be those exact words, but I think that's a fair summary. And then Councillor has also just said about poor residential amenity. Can I seek clarification if that was whether in respect to future occupiers of the proposed HMO or existing neighbouring residential amenity? And is there any concern from members about that one person intensification resulting in harm to neighbouring residential amenity, or is it just about the amenity standards for the occupiers of the HMO?
Okay, both neighbouring and the current standards and proposed future.
So what is it about the occupants of the HMO that you find harmful? Is it their bedroom sizes? Is it the outlook? Is it? I need to try and understand what you find harmful.
In particular, the shared use of the kitchen amenity, I think, is a particularly difficult situation for people, as Councillor Martin said previously.
You mean the size of it's too small for 7 people? Is that what you're saying?
It would seem, yes.
So, okay. And in terms of neighbouring residential amenity, what is it that members find harmful about that?
Well, I think that because we don't know if this person, if any future resident there might have a car, there's already a huge strain on parking in the area. And as it's been flagged up before by other people, it's a very busy pedestrianised area for children going to school.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salmon?
I think the way I would frame it and the reason I would object is focused very much on the neighbouring amenity rather than the amenity within the property. I think you can probably have a 7-bedroom HMO and it can work okay, and there's nothing I would say inherent in this application that makes me go, oh, any 7-bedroom HMO like this I would object to. To me, it is the fact that once you go to 7, regardless of what it was before, there is an increase in the levels of activity. So not just parking, but the amount of waste, the amount of noise, the amount of people coming and going, visitors and so forth, whether or not that's by car, by bike or whatever, that's the intensification. So not just the intensification of parking, but somebody who's got an entire life, an extra person in there. That's the way I would frame it. So not just about the parking, but the whole shebang of having another working age person, turning that into a building filled with 7 independent working age people. That's what I'd hang it on. And the effect that has on the neighbours rather than the effect it has on those people in there.
Thank you, councillors. That is actually useful. Based on that, then Councillor Sam has already referenced the 2 relevant policies. You've got CS41 of the core strategy that talks about development should, through its scale, density, layout, siting, character and appearance, be designed to respect the site and its surroundings and provide a high standard of amenity to meet the day-to-day requirements of future occupants and contribute positively to the appearance and safety of the public realm. It also talks about that new developments, including change of use, enhance the character, local distinctiveness, and then the amenities of future occupants and neighbouring residents. I will seek a point of clarification from Councillor Salmon again. I'm sorry if I've missed that, but you've clearly said that you feel the intensification would be harmful to neighbouring residential amenity. Do you also mean it would be harmful to the character and appearance of the area? And I'll come back on that in a moment. And the other policy, Chair, is policy 6.17 which is a saved policy from the district-wide local plan. And that says at little 1 that the proposal should be compatible with the existing character of the area. Sorry, this is a specific HMO policy. And that the proposal is compatible with the existing character of the area and the amenities of neighbouring residents will not be adversely affected by, and then it lists things like noise, overlooking, lack of privacy or general disturbance. So it feels to me, Chair, based on what the councillors are saying, that you would be looking at a refusal reason based on CS41 of the core strategy, 6.17 little 1. I'll just have a quick look at little 2. Don't think that qualifies. And then, so yeah, 6.17 little 1. And then I think we just need to clarify whether members are looking at a reason for refusal based on the parking issue. And members would also need to bolt on CS33, which deals with the payment towards the protection of the European protected heathlands, and also the New Forest SAMS mitigation strategy. So if I could just get clarification on whether it's character and appearance as well, in terms of the intensification and parking. Thank you.
So I think it depends on what you define character as. If character is something more than appearance, so the feel of an area, then I think that would come under character. In terms of parking, I don't know, I'm somewhat reluctant because I wouldn't say the issues with parking, much as they almost certainly exist. I mean, my gut is they exist. I don't feel they are stressed in the report, so I'm reluctant to put them in the reason for refusal. I think I would hang it almost entirely on CS41 and 6.17I. Yeah, little 1, whatever you want to call it.
Councillor Canavan, you're in agreement? Yep. Okay, so.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I know I'm labouring this. That's absolutely fine. So members are looking at refusing on the character of an area. So you're right, Councillor Salmon, that it could be that feel of the area changing with the intensification and the associated disturbance to neighbouring residential amenity from that intensification. Can I just get another bit of clarification as to whether members are also looking to refuse it in terms of the standard of residential amenity for the occupiers of the HMO?
Councillor Salmon.
I was torn on that because in my mind it's the neighbours that it's primarily a problem for. It's the existing residents in my mind. If officers and members felt that was incorrect, I mean, I've lived in a smaller HMO than that, and that's not been a problem, for me. But that was when I was, it was a hobbit. When I was in my 20s, very different way of living. No, I think I would focus on the neighbouring residents rather than residents of the HMO themselves. That's how I would frame it.
Okay, Councillor Martin.
Can we not put both please in? We put both in that we, it's the neighbours and the occupants as well.
That was what Councillor Clements was saying.
I would
Mr. Gore, did you think that would add weight?
Well, I'm not the decision maker here, Chair. There is a point of clarification actually about the comment on the kitchen not having a window, and I obviously came in and said there's a door. The door may have a window in it to allow light. Apologies, I overlooked the fact that there is a roof light on the floor, on the first floor plan that shows there's a roof light serving that kitchen space as well. So natural light would be allowed into it. As I've previously said, we've looked at it and we feel that, if the comparison is being made to the one at the committee last month in Charminster, we feel that this is different and that the standard of amenity for future occupants would be acceptable. But it's within the members' gift, it's their decision.
Okay, no, I think we're almost there. So Councillor Summer first.
I think from my point of view, we want to be as reasonable as possible as a committee in our reasons for refusal, and I think there is a strong case for the impact on the neighbouring residents, whereas I would say for the impact on the potential residents of the HMO, if this were to be approved, because you don't have to live there if you don't want to, I'd argue that that doesn't carry the same weight and that wouldn't be such a reasonable objection. So that's why I would want to restrict our refusal to the conflict with CS 41 and the other one based on the impact of neighbours, and I wouldn't lump in, and also we think it wouldn't be nice for everybody living there, because I don't think we are simply clutching at straws trying to come up with reasons for refusal. I think that reason for refusal is strong enough in and of itself, and I think attempting to just chuck as many things in actually makes it much weaker.
Okay, thank you. Last point, Councillor Martin.
Well, I'm disagreeing with Councillor Salmon on that point. I think the more you put in, I mean, you don't know what point, if it goes to appeal, you don't know what point's going to win and what point's going to lose. But I do agree with him that it's more the residential. The occupancy, I was just going to add as well, it's not just the kitchen, it's the fact they're losing a communal room. And if this is people's home, people are living here. I know it's their choice whether they live there or not, but for some people it isn't, because they can't afford a flat of their own. So what I'm trying to say is, if it's your home and you want to, part of having a home is bringing friends back, inviting friends and relatives in. And if you've only got one room and a kitchen, access to that, then it's just not a very pleasant way to live. It's just nice if there's a communal lounge, or in this case, called it a gym. And I noticed that basically the original building, that would have been a lounge area in the original building. So I think right from get-go, the applicant intended this to be seven rooms, and he's converted the gym into a 7th bedroom at the sort of last minute. But I think it was only a gym and store for that reason originally. That's just by the by. But no, I think it's the kitchen and a roof light still hasn't got outlook as well. It's just not a pleasant place for people to live. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So, Ms. Hollow, can you just summarise where we captured the CS 41 Oh, Mr. Gordon.
If it would help, so based on what I've been hearing, there's a concern from some members that the scheme would result in a harmful intensification by way of the change of use from C4 to sui generis HMO, which would result in a detrimental impact on the character of the area, which would then make it contrary to CS41 and 6.17 of CS41 of the core strategy and 6.17 of the district-wide local plan. And it's also felt that this intensification would be harmful to existing neighbouring residential amenity. And again, that would also be covered by CS41 of the core strategy, 6.17 of the district-wide local plan. And then because the application, if the application is refused, because it's a scheme that is generating a housing increase, then it would be contrary to CS33 of the core strategy, which deals with heathland protection and the New Forest SAMS mitigation strategy. Those two last reasons could obviously be overcome by the signing of a Section 106 agreement, because if members are moving to refuse it, that will fall away. So they need to be included as reasons for refusal so that we could secure those mitigation payments if the applicant was to appeal.
Okay, I think that's clear. So,
and one final thing, the usual little bit at the end, Chair, that could members please give delegated authority back to the head of planning operations for us to word up the reasons for refusal that would go into the decision notice.
so everyone clear on what the reason for refusal, which was proposed by Councillor Salmon, Councillor Canavan seconded. If there's no further debate, so if you are wanting to refuse, show now, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
If you're against refusal, so now.
1, 2, 3,
Sorry,
4.
I was asleep.
And I think that's no abstentions. So that application is refused. Thank you. We'll just take a very quick 5-minute break because there are people who've waited for the last application. So 5 minutes strict. Thank you. End of meeting. Okay, welcome back to Eastern Planning Committee, and we're on item 6C, which is Southbourne Crossroads. And Mr. Kulik, please.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Large presentation. Can you see that?
Yep, that's great. Thank you. Carry on.
Okay, that's perfect. So the subject side is the Southbourne Crossroad car park. Is a former car park site.
Sorry, Mr. Kulik, just before you start, just to advise that Councillor Gillett and Councillor Slade have left the meeting. So sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Noted. Yes, so this application is for Section 73 application to vary conditions 1 and 8 on the recent planning approval for development of 4 block of flats on site, and this application solely relates to changes to Block D to form a privacy wall, and a roof terrace is a part retrospective application because the brick wall, which will act as a privacy wall, has been already erected. Before we start, I just want to make a note that yesterday we received one objection and one additional objection letter, but the objection letter has not raised any additional material planning considerations. And also yesterday I've been notified by our legal department that legal agreement related to this application has been sealed and finalized. Going back to my presentation, in terms of location of the sites, as I noted already, we've got a former Southbourne Crossroads car park site, which is adjacent to St. Catherine's Terrace to the north, Southbourne Coast Roads to the south, and then we've got Roundabout, which links Southbourne Overcliff Drive to the left. This is the site plan which shows the approved block of flats A, B, C, and D. As I noted already, this proposal solely relates to block D. This slide shows relevant planning history. So the bottom application is the approved committee item, which allowed erection of 4 blocks of flats which are currently under construction on site. Then we have other applications such as erection of temporary sales office, advertising consent to advertise the site which is currently under construction. Then there was a proposal for substation and enlarging the ownership side, and the top application, which mostly relate to the kind of application, is a non-material amendment which was refused by the local planning authority last year in September. And this application basically shows exactly the same plans as those which were considered under non-material amendment application last year. Just to clarify, hopefully the following plans with some definitions and explanation around the procedural differences between non-material amendment and material planning amendment will clarify some concerns and hopefully will answer some questions which might be expected today. So the previous application, let's say, so it was non-material amendment, and such application basically introduced some minor change to which is not considered to be significant. So basically, if someone wants to get approval from a local planning authority, because some works could be considered to be very minor. So let's say someone will just basically move a window. When we compare to original permission, and local authority would define it as a non-material amendment, then it could be either approved or refused. But it's not like a planning permission or refusal itself. It's just basically confirmation from local authority if such works could be considered material or non-material amendment. And I'll go back to a definition of material and non-material consideration shortly. So then we've got a material amendment, which will be significant alteration to design, layout, impact on the development, and usually it's such changes would require planning application or a Section 73 application like this one, which would either refuse or grant planning permission for the subject works. So, so there's no strict definition in terms of non-material changes, but I just listed some, and those highlighted are mostly related to consideration of the current application and previous refusal. So as we can see, that there shouldn't be any alternation to the site boundary. There shouldn't be any conflict with previous conditions, or if we actually need to start planning assessment and we have non-material amendment application, it would basically trigger the need for a material planning consideration, which is a Section 73 application. So then material planning consideration could include overlooking concern, loss of light, design changes to approved conditions. And what's really important, some issues such as loss of view or negative effect on the value of property is not material planning consideration. This is very important when you assess applications under material planning consideration. So just going back to the proposed works, so we can see here approved street scene elevation plans, and the building towards the right is the subject side, and that's block D. So those changes under this application just relate to block D, and number of units already approved, landscaping details or other design concerns are not affected by the current application. During my site visit back in October last year, I took some photos, and we can see the brick wall, which is subject of the current application, has already been erected or was under construction, which was not considered to be in line with what was approved originally. Therefore, the applicant was advised to submit a planning application to secure this brick wall, which was not considered to be non-material planning consideration. So as we can see, we've got this brick wall again, which is next to residential properties to the rear, and I'll go back to neighbour impact assessment shortly, but I just want to show you how this brick wall look against the overall size of the scheme. So as we can see, it's fairly subservient when we look at the overall size of the approved scheme, and again, it's basically extend already approved brick wall design detailing, and is in line with design features which already been secured through the original permission. So the current works relate to condition 1, which is approved plans, and condition 8 variation. Condition 8 includes some plans which shows elevations of block D or floor plans. Therefore, those plans need to be also amended. But as I said before, the current application would not alter landscaping details or lighting proposals already secured by the original scheme. So the site plan just shows, again, what was approved and the subject block. Just to show and compare elevations which were approved on the original scheme, those are on the left-hand side, and against the current application, which is the right-hand side drawings. So as we can see, the difference is the privacy wall, which is set approximately 1.5 meter below the maximum reach height of the approved block of flats. We've got some glass balustrade proposed, which mainly would act as will be erected for safety reason, and it's approximately 1 meter high. It's glass balustrade, and obviously we received some concerns from urban design officer, but just want to make a note, those are not objections, just concerns raised in terms of how the brick wall would look against the approved north elevation. So it's not as let's say as good as this which was previously approved. It's slightly disjointed, but just looking at the overall size of the brick wall proposed, it's still considered to be subservient. Just to show you 3D elevations, again, we can see that the only difference when we compare to what was approved to what is currently proposed is the brick wall and the glass balustrade, and we've got outdoor amenity space serving this flat D3. And then again, floor plans, the only difference is additional terrace space and a brick wall proposed. In terms of impact on neighbours, so most of the adjacent neighbours wouldn't be affected. However, there's a number 35 St. Catherine's Road Terrace adjacent to the site, which is mostly affected by the scheme because of the close proximity. However, based on the planning assessment and the current policy and the adopted design guidance, the proposed scheme is on balance considered to be acceptable given distances between 7 meters towards obscure glazed windows on a ground floor level, and the terrace space on the first floor, which is separated by 10 meters away. Obviously, there will be some impact in terms of loss of sea views. However, as I noted before, those are not considered to be material planning considerations. Just going back to the adopted design guide, we've been informed that number 35A, which is one of residential properties facing the application side, actually has a principal wall facing the application side. So we have to consider, obviously, impact between the site elevation wall and principal elevation wall. So unfortunately, the scheme will be still in line with the adopted policy because there is no reference to minimum setback between the front and side elevation wall. There are some consideration in terms of minimum back to site distances, but again, this is a guidance and it need to be assessed case by cases. And again, just to show you the relationship between the nearest affected property, which also has outdoor amenity space, and obviously doing the measurements on the submitted plans, we can see the distance between the rear, the ground floor windows is 7 meters, and then as I noted before, there's a 7 meters separation distance between the outdoor amenity space serving the adjacent neighbour and the proposed and erected brick wall. So in overall, on balance, given the overall size of the scheme, which was already approved, and that was for 4 residential block of flats, and the size of the approved block D, the proposed works are not considered to be material or adversely affecting the principle of the approved scheme. There is no identified impact on the character of the local amenity, neighbours, street scene, and obviously there's no conflict in terms of highway or intensification of uses on site. Therefore, the recommendation is planning approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Coolett, for the presentation. Now we go to public speakers. Please.
Thank you, Chair. So we have 2 objectors. The first is Nadia McGarry, who's joining us on Teams. Thank you for your patience waiting online. Whenever you're ready.
It's okay, thank you very much. Chair, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here today to strongly object to the large material amendment being sought retrospectively by the developer, an amendment that concerns structures already built before planning permission was granted. This situation is not merely a technicality, it strikes at the heart of the integrity of our planning system. The National Planning Policy Framework makes clear that planning applications must be decided in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise, and that planning decisions must uphold transparency, consistency and statutory requirements. Whilst retrospective applications do exist in law, commonly known as Section 73A under the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, national guidance emphasises that they must not become substitute for seeking permission properly or to circumvent the planning system. The planning portal explicitly states that retrospective applications are not automatically granted and can lead to enforcement notices requiring works to be removed if permission is refused. If BCP Council fails to enforce here in a clear-cut case where the developer proceeded without approval, erodes all credibility for every future enforcement action. More importantly, national enforcement has recently been strengthened, and since April 2024, all planning breaches are subject to a unified 10-year enforcement period, replacing the old 4-year rule. This is in order to improve accountability and reduce unlawful building. This change signals the government's intention to deter rogue development and not reward it. If BCP Council approves this amendment, despite the clear fact that the developer built first and sought permission later, sets a deeply damaging precedent and rewards unlawful behaviour, putting developer convenience and profit above the rules. It effectively says, build what you like and sort the paperwork out afterwards. This is an open invitation for future developers to disregard the rules, which is very, very dangerous. Finally, it is within this planning committee's gift to reject this retrospective application. It not only makes a mockery of the planning system and legislation, but as previously mentioned, central government have deliberately strengthened enforcement powers for local planning authorities to stop rogue developers and developments such as this. Therefore, I urge you to reject this application decisively, not only to preserve the reputation of you yourselves, BCP Planning Authority, but to uphold the law and order and show local residents that you care about their privacy that this amendment would impede, and that you take into consideration their objections, and that you will take the right course of action when required. Thank you.
Thank you. And the second speaker is Elizabeth Bates. Liz has provided a written statement for Councillor Nonovo to read out on her behalf.
This is a statement on behalf written by Mrs. Elizabeth Bates, whose home you saw on the screen, just one of the last shots. She and her family are mostly impacted by this, and these are her words. I am objecting to this retrospective planning application, both because of the physical impact of the terrace as built and because of the way this situation has unfolded. The process has lacked transparency from the start. At no point in the original application was it made clear that the terrace would be relocated from the south elevation to the east elevation. This is not a minor adjustment. It fundamentally alters the terrace position, its relationship to neighbouring homes, and its impact on our property. Had this been accurately presented, neighbours would have understood the true implications and been able to comment meaningfully. Those unfamiliar with clifftop living on the south coast may not appreciate how significant this change is. Prevailing southerly winds will carry sound and odours directly from the terrace towards the homes behind it. What appears modest on paper becomes intrusive in reality. Conversations, gatherings, and cooking smells will travel straight into our living spaces. The developer's claim that the wall provides privacy is misleading. The privacy issue exists only because the terrace was relocated. Our home has south-facing floor-to-ceiling, first-floor windows forming our main frontage. Because of the building's orientation, we rely heavily on natural ventilation and cannot simply close windows to block noise or odours. If the terrace remains in its current position, we will have no practical way to avoid the disturbance it creates, materially diminishing our ability to enjoy our home. This situation has taken a significant toll on our well-being, Living with uncertainty, loss of privacy, and the prospect of constant disturbance has caused sustained stress and anxiety. Our home should be a place of rest, yet this development threatens to make it a source of daily strain. The emotional impact of feeling unheard and unable to protect our living environment has been deeply distressing and should be recognised as a real-world consequence of this proposal. We had hoped to accept the development as originally understood, even if not ideal. Instead, we now face a permanent and avoidable impact on our daily lives. This is not a short-term inconvenience. but a lasting change to how we will be able to live in our own property. I must also note that the terrace wall was constructed while the developer knew we were away last summer. While character is not a planning consideration, this behaviour has contributed to our sense of being excluded from a process that directly affects us. In conclusion, this application seeks to regularise a substantial and impactful change that was never transparently presented. The siting, orientation and resulting loss of amenity are significant. I respectfully ask the committee to consider the real-world consequences for neighbouring residents and to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And speaking in support, we have Chris Meal.
So can we just have the elevations in floor plan slide shown? So I think that would be helpful. Yeah, thank you. So, good afternoon, members. My name is Chris Mill and I'm an Associate Director at Pure Town Planning, and I'm a Chartered Town Planner and a former Planning Inspector. I'm here speaking in support of the proposal on behalf of the applicant, Vivere Estates. The application is before you today following a call-in request from Councillor Novo, who considers that the proposal would be contrary to NPPF guidance, which aims to achieve inclusive, safe and healthy environments. In her words, proceeding with the changes without approval, the developer has disregarded these national standards. I wish to use my time today to respond to these comments and address the public objections and explain why members should support the officer's recommendation to grant permission for this minor amendment. Before discussing the planning merits of the scheme, I would like to draw members' attention to the following part of the planning practice guidance, which provides advice to councils regarding the assessment of retrospective applications. It states that local planning authorities should take care not to fetter its discretion prior to the determination of any application for planning permission, and retrospective applications must be considered in the normal way. Therefore, the councillor's stance that my client's application should be treated differently because it's retrospective is contrary to government guidance, and such comments must be disregarded by members. As you've heard, this application relates solely to flat 3 of Block D. No changes are proposed to the other blocks, and the agreed planning obligations, which include payments towards affordable housing, replacement bus shelter and zebra crossings, remain unaffected. As members will be aware, the original permission for this site was allowed at appeal, with costs awarded against the council following a member overturn. During construction of the superstructure for Block D, the applicant identified that mutual overlooking could occur from the open plan living area of flat 3 into the first floor terrace area and conservatory of number 35 St Catherine's Terrace. The approved plans feature extensive glazing on the east elevation and look out over a flat roof maintenance area, and it was clear from site inspections that this layout would cause mutual overlooking between the southern portion of the living area of flat 3 and the first floor terrace and conservatory of number 35. To remedy this situation, the applicant has constructed a privacy wall above part of the approved flat roof for Block D, which has also allowed for the formation of a roof terrace to flat 3 behind the wall. The flat roof area to the east of the glass balustrading does not form part of the roof terrace, and it is not accessible to residents. No other changes are proposed to flat 3. The wall is 5 metres long and 1.8 metres high, which is the standard height for a privacy screen. It has been constructed from brickwork which matches the wider development. Therefore, it appears as a subservient addition to Block D and successfully assimilates into the approved design. The privacy wall is set a good distance away from the first floor rear elevation of number 35. The plans show it is 10 metres away from the conservatory windows and 7 metres away from the edge of the first floor terrace area, with the intervening road providing separation between the new and existing developments. Given its limited height and the separation distance, the privacy wall does not result in an overbearing impact upon occupants of number 35. It's recognised that the outlook from the neighbouring terrace would change, but change in and of itself does not equate to material harm in planning terms. And in this case, due to the separation distance and the length and orientation of the neighbouring terrace, the occupants of 35 will still have unimpeded outlook over the flat roof maintenance area of Block D towards the coast, and thus they remain a suitable outlook at the property. Members, to conclude, this application has been thoroughly assessed by your officer. who has concluded in his report that the relationship between the development and adjacent residential properties would not result in a material loss of privacy or have an overbearing impact, and the proposal would accord with local plan policies with regards to the protection of amenities of neighbouring uses. I share this view. Therefore, I hope you agree with your officer's recommendation to grant permission and vote in favour of the proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have Ward Councillor, Councillor Bernadette Nonovo. Councillor Nonovo, sorry. Whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Bernadette Nonovo, and I represent East Southbourne and Tufton Ward. And before I go into my written statement, I've just been asked to point out that the nearest 35A St. Catherine's Road is not a conservatory that is closest to this wall. It's their whole living space. So it's a kitchen, diner, and roof terrace where they spend most of their days. And that's just in response to the statement we heard. The main issue here, as we have been hearing, is the terrace and wall being added to Block D, the retrospective part of this application. Calling it a minor material amendment may work within the rules of planning, but this is a major amendment for the residents who own and live nearby, who now find themselves within 6 metres of this high, overbearing wall, when the original plans, which they had reluctantly accepted, didn't have any roof terrace or wall in this location. It may seem appropriate for the developer to erect a wall to protect the privacy of his future purchaser from prying eyes, but who is going to protect the current residents from groups partying 6 metres from them and their children and looking into their homes? I know the committee are guided to a certain extent by the planning officer's recommendation, but in this case, I wish you to consider that the officer report fails to properly assess the real impacts of the proposed roof terrace. There has been no meaningful analysis of overlooking, noise, or intensification of use from an elevated platform. Instead, the report wrongly defers harm to environmental protection legislation. Planning policy requires harm to be prevented now, not dealt with after residents suffer it. The privacy assessment looks only at the wall, not the terrace itself, which creates direct overlooking into neighbouring homes at distances of just 7 to 10 metres, far below typical planning standards. The report even contradicts itself on fenestration changes, undermining its reliability. It also fails to assess cumulative impact, fails to explain why this previously refused proposal is now acceptable, and provides no verified visual evidence. This is not a minor amendment. It introduces clear and harmful amenity impacts, clearly contravening CS 41. The site is already a large and controversial development in a sensitive residential setting. The report fails to assess cumulative harm from intensification, contrary to NPPF 130 and 134. The wall and terrace is not subservient, and 2 roof terraces back to back within 6 metres of each other do not meet residential design guides. And the main test, which the report does not address, is whether the terrace would have been approved as part of the original application. This is the legal test for a Section 73 amendment, I understand. And I just wanted to say that I have incorporated some of the points made by Mr. Richard Norgrove, who did want to speak today, but was too late in his submission. So I wanted to make sure his points had been heard. Thank you very much to the Planning Committee, and I will hope that you do not grant planning permission to this wall and terrace. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillor. So, Mr. Kulik, is there anything from what you've heard that you want to come back on?
Maybe just briefly, because I believe, during discussion we might have exactly the same questions. But in terms of the way how the application was assessed or against the relevant planning policy or enforcement, there's nothing contrary, and everything's been assessed in line as it's supposed to be, because enforcement has been notified about this brick wall. Enforcement notification was, the applicant was notified by our enforcement team. Therefore, this application is part of the enforcement process, because if the applicant is able to secure planning permission, will be able to avoid a stop notice. So that's one thing. In terms of the assessment of the size, my report, I don't believe anything's been done, again, contrary to any planning policy, because my written assessment is based on the submitted plans, and obviously officers' site visit. As members could see, I visited the site physically. I was able to assess the site from different viewpoints, and also in terms of the overlooking or direct loss of privacy matters, I cannot see how the privacy wall, which act as a structure which will avoid privacy without any windows, would cause direct overlooking of the adjacent terrace. And the last point, eastern elevation plans which were referred as changes to elevation. That's something which unfortunately was copied from comments from Highway Authority, because the issue with changes to fenestration along the eastern elevation relates to the way how windows now will be set to allow someone to actually access the outdoor amenity space, but the windows, the size of them, the visually, will be exactly the same as on the approved scheme. And obviously there are no additional windows along the north elevation, which is the most important one when we assess the impact on the adjacent neighbours. So there are no additional windows, no changes to windows along the elevation which faces the adjacent neighbour. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. So questions, councillor Tarling?
Yeah, to the officer, Mr. Kulik, could you just pull up the plan of the GAs again so that we can see the difference between the terrace and, yeah, no, the next one down, please. Measures. That one. Is it possible to see that slightly larger? So the point you just made on the fenestration on the eastern elevation is actually remaining the same. It's quite difficult to determine whether there's any sort of change in. There won't be any change in the original scheme. The approved plans. Is it possible to see in from that balcony of number 35 inside that, and is that the reason for this privacy wall? I know you're not necessarily given a reason, but
those plans which you can see here, they're exact screenshots from the approved plans on the original scheme, and this is what we got right now. I think it will be easier to assess that when we look at the approved elevation plans. So as we can see, we're talking about the eastern elevation wall. So as you can see, hopefully maybe here on this one.
Mr. Kulik, you can actually see that wall does extend on the approved plans. The wall does extend slightly beyond the line of the fenestration. You can see that on the top left image of the comparable elevation. So there is already there was there was some consideration given to privacy in the approved plans. Thank you. That's my only question. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor Canavan.
Yeah, I'm just asking for clarification on the point that Councillor Nanova raised, that the suggestion that this application was previously refused. So is that right? And if so, what's changed?
Okay, yeah, so that's something which I was mentioning on my previous slides, which relates to procedural differences between non-material amendment and Section 73 application. When we say we refuse non-material amendment, we didn't refuse the planning application itself. We just said the correct process to secure such changes, which would require assessment of in terms of design impact on the neighbors, would be through different process, which calls Section 73 application, and this application would assess material planning considerations. So we couldn't actually secure this application without actually publicity and assessment of some of those concerns which were raised on the non-material amendment. So hopefully we'll clarify, but it's really confusing because there are like different types of applications. So the correct way to assess such scheme is the Section 73 application, which we have right now.
Okay, Councillor Salmon.
Just on process, I don't understand the urban design officer contribution to the report. I don't understand what concerns raised means. So they don't object, but they don't like it. Why have we not got clarity from them and where they stand on this?
We can always ask urban design officer. Hopefully she will be able. Yeah, I think Sophie, she's on the call as well. She can explain that. But my understanding is we've got no objection, but concerns were raised in terms of how the design would look against what was approved. But I can see Sophie. Maybe she can explain her position.
Yeah, I mean, I think just I'm looking more on the impact from the public realm, so from the sort of alleyway itself, as opposed to the neighbours' impact. And to my mind, it's not quite as successful as a composition as what has been approved. But I think that's not really the key issue here. You know, that additional wall is, in terms of the street scene, it doesn't make a major difference, but it obviously is much more significant in terms of the neighbour impact.
Just to be clear, is this application policy compliant as far as you're concerned as the urban design officer, or do you feel a need to object? Because I think if we were to, I'm not sure if that's something, if your concerns are something that if this were to be refused, was something that we could use or not.
I would say, looking at this in terms of the scale of the whole development, it's not really very relevant. I wouldn't recommend using the sort of appearance in the street scene as a reason for refusal. But it's that, you know, in this case, it is fairly subjective. It's a bit of a difficult call, but I wouldn't refuse it purely on design grounds, or I wouldn't necessarily include that as a reason for refusal. I think this one is quite subjective, and in the scale of the overall scheme, it's not that significant.
Okay, and then I've just got a couple more questions. So given how close this extra wall is to number 35, I just wondered if there was any type of assessment, I don't know, on daylight, on noise, on impact that had been carried out, if anything like that was possible.
I mean, in terms of noise impact, so the officer's report mentioned that like it wouldn't be against residential activities which could be accepted within this location or on this sort of scheme. So noise concerns. Again, if we say a temporary use of outdoor terrace, which won't be used 365 days per year, and there will be occasional I don't know, barbecues on this wall, I really doubt this would cause a massive noise concerns. So given the scale of the scheme, it wasn't necessary to assess like a proper noise assessment. And again, given the distances, which will be in line with our design guide and 45-degree rule, and the setting of the adjacent neighbour, again, it was assessed during the assessment of the scheme. So I can't see again this scale of development should require a separate daylight and impact assessment or noise impact assessment.
So just to be clear, because when somebody goes, oh, there's not going to be enough parking, you know, or X, Y, or Z is going to be a problem, I feel like I can pinpoint in the report when we're dismissing resident objections. I can see this is where in the report it says this is not a concern because we've done X, Y, or Z assessment. I'm just wondering in terms of, because in my mind, I can see why I would potentially be frustrated at that wall going up if I lived in number 35. I'm just wondering where in the report it says we don't feel that this is a concern because X, Y, or Z assessment has taken place, or is it just that we're having a go on gut feeling because of the scale of the application? It wasn't felt that was a sensible use of resources.
So obviously, reports includes officers' assessments. So obviously that's my written report. So some paragraphs refer to, let's say, the distances, 7 and 10 meters distance, which won't cause any adverse loss of light. So that's officer's view, and such relationship wouldn't warrant a planning refusal, neither will be considered to be overbearing. And in terms of like noisy activities, I think there's a line saying, just bear with me. There's a line talking about it is something which is expected within residential setting.
If it helps, I'm looking at sections 36 to 40 in the report, and I'm just trying to go, all right, what's the actual evidence base here? You know, there's no equivalent of the parking study or anything like that. I can't see, and I'm not as good at looking at the drawings and whatnot as Councillor Tarling, but I can't tell what it would look like if I was looking out the window of number 35 from this, and I can't tell why we're confidently seeing in this report that the concerns from the residents of number 35 are being kind of ignored, might be the right word. Just in maybe I'm looking in the wrong place, looking at 36 to 40. Is there somewhere else where we're going, this is why we're confident that there isn't a clash?
Obviously, within the policy sections, there are all relevant policies which were taken into consideration when we assess a planning scheme. So obviously, there's no requirement to actually refer to each of those policies within the assessment. It's just basically a note. We took that into consideration. And in terms of I think the starting point is we have to assess this scheme against the overall size, scale, and massing of the original permission. So taking the overall size, scale, and of the approved scheme, the privacy wall, as said within the officer's report, is considered to be subservient and not materially harmful. So as I said, it's a minor scale, minor size scheme. Therefore, I wouldn't expect noise impact or daylight impact assessment reports required for such assessment.
I don't think I've got anything further to ask about, straight into debate.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get my head around the difference between the original consented application for the whole development and this one. I get the wall. What I'm asking about is the flat roof that is now partly coloured green and partly the terrace. In the original consent, what was the position of that space? In other words, the one on the screen now, the one on the left, were residents of that flat 3, D3, allowed to use the green area, or was it barred, or, was it refused? And I'm getting a head shaken at me, but I would like to hear this from the officer.
There wasn't any condition restricting use of such terrace, but obviously if someone decided to use that terrace as an outdoor amenity space, this could trigger the need for planning permission. So again, it depends, to what level. I mean, technically someone could access that, but wouldn't be safe. So obviously other requirements would apply, like building regs, or other building control regulations, which are outside planning consideration. But long story short, there was no condition restricting access to this roof terrace, but it wouldn't mean like someone could just use that as a terrace space without probably the need for additional planning permission.
Leading on from that, was access possible? In other words, is there any variation in the presumably glass partition, or was there any doorway, for sake of the words, through that onto that roof? Or is that having to be a change as well that isn't mentioned here?
There's no mention to that. So unfortunately, we only had windows shown on the original scheme. So even as discussed before today, we cannot see like differences in terms of glazing or openings when we compare the approved and proposed plans. So unfortunately, I'm unable to answer that.
Thank you.
Changing window wouldn't require planning permission, I'm assuming, as well. So.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kulik. So the obviously this was initially approved on appeal, and one of the reasons why the BCP Council were refusing it was about the scale density. This was about the whole complex, not just D. But was there anything in the inspector's decision about the closeness of St Catherine's, or about what the density, the massing appearance would be like for those people behind? I looked at it nearer the time, but I can't actually go in it now. It's security is preventing me from accessing it. Thank you.
If you allow me 2 minutes to find out this appeal decision, I could answer that, but I'm not sure.
Any other questions? No, we'll just wait for that information then.
Apologies.
No, that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah, because we have to go back to this 2000, I believe, 21 permission, because obviously that's not the C approvals.
Because obviously the BCP Council, we said there was an issue with density, but obviously the inspector.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was definitely assessed by the inspector, because if something been allowed, so definitely impact on the neighbouring properties was also assessed. But I'm just trying my best, but obviously everything's frozen now, so I'm trying to get into our system later. Fortunately, I have to restart my system, our data system, because it's just stopped working. Unless other officers on a call could try to find this appeal decision, I can provide reference number. Because I can't physically access that now.
I mean, Chair, obviously we'll find the appeal decision, but there's no doubt about it that the inspector would have considered the relationship to neighbouring residential properties, if that's the question.
But yeah, we'd be interested what he specifically said and what his overall view was, just to see. But as suggested, we're going to debate, and Mr. Kulik, if you can come back on that. So
yeah, I'll try.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, just if you look at the before pictures after, up a document in front of Mr. Kulak's put up a document in front of the original plans. But if you look at the original plans, before and after, there's only one upstairs flat, and that's directly above a copy of the flat below. But in the copy of the flat below, they've got the balcony at the front. You see where I mean? Yeah, you see where they've got the no. If you put some picture back, please. They've got the balcony at the front, but they haven't done that on the upper flat. Instead they've put a kitchen island in and brought the whole thing forward, so there's no room for a terrace at the front. And so I wonder if they always intended to put the terrace to the side. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just saying it's a bit sort of underhand. They should have applied for it as it was, as they've now done, which they didn't do. What they've done is they've said, "Oh, we're not going to put a terrace on that upper flat," and then they've decided they are going to, because they could have put the terrace in the same position as the flat below. Do you know what I mean? But then you'd have to get rid of the kitchen island to do that, so they can shimmy everything back. Do you see where I'm going with this? Yeah, it's I'm just stating that, you know, it's a bit underhand that they've gone and put this terrace to the side, which wasn't originally planned. It's a massive difference.
Okay, so this is what we've got in front of us. So Councillor Tarling.
Thank you very much. I've heard what the urban design officer said about the design, and I don't think that it's actually subservience is actually I think it is subservient. The whole application and the whole development, if you take the development as a whole, has a feature in it which we've seen on many developments of stepping back, where you bring the roof heights back. We've seen a lot of these, especially in seafront locations, where we find that you step back features on the upper floors. If on the original application the developer wanted to maximise their sales revenue, they wouldn't have done a 1.5 building on the M block. They'd have built out, 4 stories to full width, because that's the way to maximise it. So the development has been stepped back as that approved street scene there for that exact purpose. And we've seen on many applications where you see a line and there's an impression given on the street scene when you've got this stepping back.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely obvious to everybody on this committee that the developer is looking to maximise their sales revenue by adding this extra balcony on. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to work that out. If the opportunity, if it was shown with that privacy wall on it at the original application, the local residents would have had additional grounds to make comments. So what they've done is they've left it off and then thought, you know what, we'll try and sneak a bit in later. And for me, it's incredibly disingenuous. I know it's very difficult to put in planning law, you know, this approach. And, you know, they've looked at the plans again and said, oh, well, it's 45-degree rule. It doesn't impact. It's the overlooking thing. Well, yeah, if you're going to have a terrace there will be overlooking. If you don't have the terrace there wouldn't be overlooking. In the original scheme, there is that little nib wall to the side, which provides a bit of privacy from, in theory, number 35, in my opinion, looking into the internal living space of that first floor flat. So by extending it, yes, we'll put the wall there for everybody's benefit for privacy, but it really is just design creep, in my view. And I think, okay, it's very difficult to prove if this was on the original scheme, would we or the planning inspector have said, oh, well, yeah, of course, there's this issue as well, but it is a really disingenuous application. So I think it is not subservient, as mentioned, and I think CS41's size, scale and massing, it affects the design of the scheme. So, you know, I am minded to not grant in accordance with CS41 over size, scale and massing, because it does affect the overall scheme, and I don't think you can just wave it away. There was another bit that struck me, was that I think, I forgot to ask this as a question, but that roof, I think, is down as a brown roof. Is that correct? Did I read that somewhere? Kulik?
Yes, no, it's not. The only brown roof was along block A, and there was a separate condition requiring discharge of living wall and brown roof details. Possibly it was condition 18 on the original scheme. So the green roof was not affected, or is not affected by the scheme, neither the provision of PV panels.
Okay, well, yeah, there's no PV panels on it. I see that, but you know, obviously, in theory, it could be a bird nesting site you reduced. Yeah, whether any residents want seagulls nesting on it or not, I don't know, but other birds are available. So yeah, I'm minded to, and I'd like to hear what other people say, but I'm not for granting this.
Just before Councillor Salmon comes in, if I can ask Mr. Gould to say what the inspector said.
Well, I'm still sort of, I think I've found an appeal decision, but I'm not sure if it's the relevant one. I'm still working my way through it, Chair, but I will just take the opportunity to just, I'm slightly concerned by some of the comments here. You know, as you heard from one of the deputations earlier, the planning system is not designed to penalise someone because they have gone ahead and built something that they didn't have permission for. You shouldn't base your decision on the fact that, well, we want to punish them because we don't trust them anymore. And it has to be on the merits of the case. So I would urge members to stick to the merits of the case. So you'll either find this set of proposals, which is for the terrace and the wall, to be acceptable or not. And you should really focus in on what planning grounds you find it to be acceptable or not acceptable, as opposed to the fact that for some reason we want to punish someone because they're doing it retrospectively. That's the whole purpose of this application. So, you know, there's nothing underhand about this application. It's in the public domain. It says what it seeks permission for. And I would urge members to stick to basing their decision on whether they feel this additional wall and terrace is in some way harmful. And I'll leave it for there for now, Chair.
But going back to the inspectors, was there any comment about like neighbours and distances?
There is a section on Outlook for living conditions. As I say, if you could just carry on, and I'm still working my way through it because I haven't found anything specific at the moment in respect to the relationship of Block D to the number 35.
Okay, Councillor Salmon.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. You know, I think I've got the right appeal at the front of me, so hopefully you can see that there's no reference to number 35. There's a reference to 23 or 25. It's a really short assessment. I'm not going to lie. You know, the appeal decision shows just a few sections around the Outlook assessment.
Could you read out some poignant text, could you please, Mr. Kulik?
Do you want the whole section?
Just relevant parts saying about any reference to the neighbours in the houses
There's
behind.
no. I mean, there's a reference to so measured. So let's say paragraph 27. There's a reference to number 25. So it's in line with 45-degree rule, and obviously the design in terms of step back elevation is acceptable. Then there's a reference to number 27, which is block C, to stay extension to the rear of 227. St. Catherine's won't affect and won't be unacceptable, harmful. And then there's assessment on the two-story Pilates studio, which is again adjacent to the rear of the side. And again, that was considered to be acceptable. There's a separate section around daylight assessment because the daylight and sunlight assessment was submitted for the whole scheme. And again, there was it wasn't considered to be unacceptable in terms of living condition for future for occupants of the adjacent dwellings.
Okay, but nothing about like we obviously see there was a step down on that D. There's no actual reference from the inspector to say you can see acknowledgement of a step down and why it stepped down.
Within this section, no, I can't see such reference.
No. Okay, thanks for checking. Okay, Councillor Summer.
So if that wasn't a proposal from Councillor Tarling, I think I'm pretty much out. In my mind, regardless of the context and whatnot, if I lived at number 35, given the number of responses and so forth, I don't think there's enough in this report for me to feel confident that we're making the right call here. It's really close, to that. It's 7 metres away. It's a big thing. In my mind, that is, whatever it is, overbearing, additional mass. If there's been if somebody had gone round to number 35 and gone, I've looked out this window, I've done an assessment of the light, I can see what I can see, and it is all good, I could maybe understand going, oh no, this is an amazing design that avoids those problems. But without that assurance, I'm not confident there isn't a conflict with CS41, and I think it's also a conflict with 6.10 of the Bournemouth District-wide local plan on flats. I think that's what I would want to refuse the application on. And I think it's just that wall, isn't it? We're not looking at the whole shebang. There's no tilted balance. We're not going, oh, don't build a bunch of extra flats. We're going, oh, this wall they've sneaked in is a problem, which I think it is. So regardless of how it's come in.
And referring to the CS41, what in particular were you focusing on?
So I'd say that where you've got that additional 1.8 metre solid roof level wall positioned very close, is it 7 metres from a rear elevation of number 35, that introduces additional bulk and mass which materially harms the outlook from number 35 and creates an overbearing relationship in the street scene. Yeah.
Did you quote another?
I think the other one is the Bournemouth District-wide local plan 610. My laptop is about to die because I've got no battery, but I think, 610, development of flats, requiring them to respect the living conditions of occupiers. Oh, Jill, you are a star. Thank you. It's not a very searchable document, but I'm fairly certain it is 610, 6.10.
So that's a proposal. Councillor Tarling, did you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say, I've just measured this room, and the distance is almost identical, the width of this room to the distance between the wall and the balcony. So just to give a bit of context.
Are you second?
I'm happy to second. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak? Mr. Gould.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know if Piotr could. Oh, that photo on the screen is quite useful. So obviously reference is made to the distance between the unauthorised wall at the moment and the windows on the ground floor. And I think in Piotr's presentation, he mentions that's about 7 metres. Just for clarity, members should note that those two windows you can see in that left-hand image on the ground floor in the rear of the are obscure glazed. And then obviously when you come up to the terrace above it, the living room, or which was referred to as a conservatory earlier, but is actually a habitable living space, as we've heard from councillor, is obviously set further back. So I don't know if Piotr can put slide that shows like the cross section, almost like the side.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. So if you look at the image on the left there, it gives you the context. So you can see the rear of the development and the wall where it says privacy wall. So the distance at ground floor, which is essentially the width of the lane, is about 7 meters, as you've heard from Piotr. But then obviously you go up to the terrace level, and then the actual windows are set back by about another 3. So that gives you a 10-meter separation difference. And I think that we felt as officers that given the commensurate height of Block D at this point to the existing property in the terrace, we felt that relationship was acceptable. And bearing in mind that the ground floor windows are obscure glazed.
So I think if a committee are happy for a state of fact, if a resident wants to just clarify this point, are you happy with that? Yeah. If you come to the mic then, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't want to speak because it's obviously quite an emotional thing for me, but the bottom part of our windows are obscured glass and the top section is clear glass. So I just want to make that point that in every planning detail that the developers have put down, they've called them obscured glass, but only the bottom section is obscured and the top is clear.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Okay, so as you saw from the picture, that part you can see is not obscured. The largest part of the window, as you can see from a Google Street, you can see that the bigger part is. Did you want to make any other point about the policies CS41 and 6.1?
Obviously CS41 has been cited. That's a relevant policy because obviously it talks about developments not having an adverse impact on neighbouring residential amenity. I was just pondering the reference to 610, which is a flatted related policy in the district-wide local plan, and also the sort of more up-to-date equivalent policy CS21 in the core strategy. Those tend to be where the actual relevant policies, when you go back to the beginning of this development, when you're looking at the whole principle of the block of flats, as opposed to here where obviously the block of flats is approved. We're dealing with an application here very specifically for a terrace and a wall. So I'm inclined to say members, CS41 covers it. That's all you need, if that's what members.
Okay. Yeah, let's drop that then.
Okay. Any other comments? No. Obviously, the reason I was asking about the inspectors, I remember when this application came to committee, and we obviously refused it because of the neighbours behind. And from when I did read inspector's full report, it seemed to ignore a lot of the impact on the neighbours behind. So for me, unfortunately, I couldn't support refusal. I think it was the inspector would stick to their guns on what they previously approved. Okay, any other speakers? If not, we have the Mr. Good.
Sorry, Chair, just the usual bit of housekeeping. If there's going to be a vote to overturn the officer's recommendation, then CS41 and adverse impact on neighbouring residential amenity has been cited. You'd also need to add CS33, which again deals with heathlands mitigation and also the new forest mitigation strategy. Because a Section 73 application, if approved, is a brand new standalone planning permission, we would therefore need to secure through the Section 106 agreement those mitigation measures. So again, it's more of a technical procedural thing. And the last thing, like I said on the last application, is if members go down that route, can we please have delegated authority back to the head of planning operations so that we can word up the decision notice, the refusal decision notice.
Okay, appreciate that. And Ms. Hollow, you've got the reasons for refusal down.
So, Chair, I have just written down what Mr Gould has said, and obviously it will be fleshed out in the
Okay, and
notice.
Councillor Salmon has proposed. You're happy with that, and Councillor Tammer?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, everyone clear on? So the vote to refuse, indicate now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Against
1.
and abstentions. Okay, so that application is refused. That's refused. Thank you. And that brings the meeting to a close. Thank you for your attendance.
What?